that we are on the lands of Anishinaabe Nation. This spot where we gather is the traditional land of the Three Fires Confederacy, the Ottawa, Potawatomi, and Ojibwe. We also recognize that this land is now home to the Delaware Nation. This land was settled through the McKee Purchase Treaty of 1790, and we as beneficiaries of the treaty must recognize our responsibilities, including our collective responsibilities to the land and water. Mr. Mayor, there is no supplementary agenda this evening. Rules of decorum at a council meeting. The municipality of Chatham-Kent supports open meetings that welcome debate of public policy issue in an atmosphere of inclusiveness, integrity, civility, fairness, and respect for all differing points of view. Anyone conducting themselves in a way that disturbs, disrupts, or impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting, interrupts or makes derogatory statements or hate speech, defamatory comments about councillors, staff, speakers, or fellow members of the public may result in removal from the premises. This also applies to deputations. We ask that you do not approach members of council if they are seated in their council seat, and the public, unless invited, is not permitted to come into the gated horseshoe area. The use of posters, signage, and literature is also prohibited. We have regrets this evening from Councillor Brock McGregor, and Councillor Jamie McGrail is participating via the Zoom call. There are no disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening, and we'll now move on to deputations. I would like to advise the people doing deputations this evening that Council has received your deputation via email today, giving them time to review it. We do have many to hear from this evening, so in an effort to have an efficient meeting, we ask if your points have been made in an earlier deputation that you only present the new information that Council may have not heard yet. This way we can allow Council more time tonight to discuss this important topic. Council, we have received 28 deputations today. 11 of them were via email only. 1 is on the Zoom call, and we have 16 in person this evening. I'll remind all people doing deputations that you have a maximum of 5 minutes, and the timer will be up on the screen. We'll start this evening with Kelly Gossking from Mental Health Network, and on deck is Amanda Perini from New Beginnings. Welcome, Kelly.
Good evening. My name is Kelly Gottschling, and I am the Executive Director of the Mental Health Network. I'm on leave right now, but felt this was serious enough to attend. I'd like to speak to you about encampments and how they offer basic protection from the elements when shelters are full or inaccessible. With housing shortages and long shelter wait lists, many simply have nowhere to go. An encampment, even if makeshift, can be a safer alternative than being alone in the streets. Living in a group is often safer than being alone. People in encampments can look out for each other, share resources, and offer emotional support, all of which reduce isolation and vulnerability to violence. When people are in one place, outreach workers can provide help more efficiently. Medical care, mental health care, food distribution, and housing outreach can be coordinated when people are gathered in one space rather than scattered. People have a right to exist, even when they don't have housing. Everyone deserves dignity. Until stable housing is available, encampments are sometimes the only option people have. And we have to remember that they are our citizens of Chatham-Kent. In a world where unhomed may be vulnerable to violence, theft, and exploitation, Having a network of trusted individuals can provide a sense of safety and protection. Homeless individuals often share information about valuable resources like food banks, shelters, or places they can find temporary refuge. They may also share resources like food items, clothing, or sleeping bags. The unhomed can rely on each other for practical assistance as well, such as watching each other's belongings, helping with tasks, or providing a safe space for a short time. Finally, I would like to say that taking the tents down every morning or allowing one person in a tent is unreasonable and I believe a human rights issue. If you want to be angry with someone, write to Trevor Jones or Dave Epp, the representatives in our region. Ask them to advocate for additional housing resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Next speaker is Amanda Perini. On deck is Amanda Lidle.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Perini, and I am the Executive Director of the not-for-profit organization New Beginnings. We are the Acquired Brain Injury and Stroke Recovery Association servicing Chatham-Kent. We provide supportive services to survivors of brain injury and stroke and their families and their caregivers. I know many of you because I also sit on the Accessibility Advisory Committee here for the municipality. The population that my organization serves includes vulnerable individuals with physical and mental disabilities. Some are experiencing food insecurity and housing challenges, while others are simply looking for a safe and welcoming space to continue their rehabilitation and recovery. We are located at 9 Maple Leaf Drive at the corner of Park and Maple Leaf in Chatham. We are almost directly across from the Transitional Housing Initiative. I am here today to initiate open dialogue after reading the Mayor's motions regarding encampments in Chatham-Kent. Specifically, Motion 3 regarding moving individuals from the current encampment to the transitional cabins on the corner of Park Street and Hislop. More consultation needs to be done with the proposed community before making a snap decision in response to the public backlash regarding the current location. In its initial proposal and consultation, the municipality identified parameters around the occupants of the transitional units, and I am asking council to consider these parameters when making a decision regarding the future of the current encampment. There is already an encampment in our neighborhood. The individuals that reside there have posed a number of challenges to my organization, as well as many of our neighbors. We have been perpetually vandalized. Our dumpster has been lit on fire. The dumpster lids have been broken so many times that we now leave them open. On a daily basis, my staff have to clean up hazardous material. Broken glass, fecal matter, and other hazardous materials are carelessly scattered around our property without regard for our members. On numerous occasions, the police have been called to our organization for attempted break-ins, theft, and vandalism. Most recently, we have a few individuals that have taken it upon themselves to tap into our exterior water sources and have been caught on camera filling water jugs and placing them in a wagon that was stolen from us 2 months ago. We now have to turn the exterior water off each night. The church in front of us recently installed a new air conditioning unit and had to put a barbed wire fence around it to ensure that the new unit is not vandalized. My organization has spent over $10,000 in the past 18 months, increasing the lighting around our building, installing additional security features in an attempt to deter thieves and vandals. As a not-for-profit, this means the potential for our members to go without vital services in an effort to redistribute funds towards mitigation efforts. Our organization recognizes the ethical implications of displacement and the challenges these individuals face, as well as the need for a compassionate approach to relocation. The next move that you make requires transparency, consultation, and forethought to ensure that we don't meet back here again addressing the same situation relative to a different location. Some of the individuals that attend day programming at New Beginnings have themselves experienced homelessness, social inequity, and discrimination. They recognize and are sympathetic to those experiencing challenges of their own, but also don't feel that their recovery should be hindered as a result. The municipality has a duty to ensure that any actions taken regarding encampments are proportionate to the risks involved. Compassionate leaders don't avoid hard decisions. They make them with humility, creating space for growth, even in adversity. I challenge the leaders of our community to make compassionate decisions. Don't avoid the hard conversations for fear of backlash. Create space for growth and consider all residents of Chatham-Kent who have been or could be potentially impacted by the decisions you make. Thank you.
Next speaker is Amanda Lidle. On deck is Claire McDowell.
Hi everyone, my name is Amanda Lidle and my family and I reside in a home which overlooks the PUC green space. We have been there for 17 years and bought our home in dreams of filling it with children who would enjoy and thrive in the surrounding environment, community, and close schools. On July 16th, my husband discovered a male individual face down beside the public walking path. When he told me about him, I took my phone, exited our back deck, and went to see if the man was still there. He was. So instead of calling 911, the number I have known to call my entire life, if anyone needs help, I looked up the non-emergency line. I called it twice because in my frantic state, I couldn't follow the many menu items. I eventually literally hit 9. I still don't know exactly what I called, but it was a dispatcher who helped me through an uncomfortable, uneasy time. My instincts are to help, but that day I was torn with uncertainty due to articles released about complaints in our area and the advice to stop calling the emergency line. I felt so guilty because I was afraid to approach the individual due to his location and potential circumstances. My children watched as I broke down, apologized to the dispatcher and the police that arrived. Because again, I was unsure what I was doing was right. The follow-up to this incident is that my family and neighbors who came out to support me are now, we became visible as the homeowners. I am sure that the tents surrounding the unhoused individuals heard and saw what was happening, and they retaliated, as the following day when my husband went out our back fence, we were met with a pile of human excrement, which was right in the middle of our gate. My head knows that many of them don't understand that I was trying to help that day. My heart hurts because my children can no longer go out in their yard. Our friends and families with young children do not want to play volleyball on our field. And my children can no longer walk to soccer practices because the association has left and tried to relocate practices. We have officially been in touch with realtors to discuss our options because what was once a place for us to feel our children could grow up enjoying, sharing it with friends, and most of all, feeling safe is no longer. Now it is a place where we have to read pamphlets as a family in order for them to understand what is going on around us and what they have to do to keep themselves safe in our home and neighborhood. Although these seem like good lessons for children, I have to ask, is this what you are reading to your children right now? Thank you, Mayor Caniff and council members, for creating this opportunity for us to speak and put forth new proposals.
Next speaker is Claire McDowell. On deck is Colleen Lewis.
Mayor Caniff and Chatham-Kent councillors. My name is Claire McDowell. I would like to start by thanking you for calling this meeting and also thank those of you who took the time to respond to emails, phone calls, and many community members, and to visit the encampment at the PUC, also having conversations with those you encountered there, both housed and unhoused. We appreciate not only your time, but also your acknowledgement that this issue needs to be addressed for all encampments in Chatham-Kent. After reading the two proposals and comparing them with information gathered from other cities around the province, I could quickly see the positive correlation between Mayor Caniff's proposal and procedures already in place in other cities. They are proven ideas that would have positive results here as well. So as a result, I'm going to confine my comments to a couple of additional items that have also come from other cities in response to our experiences in the community over the last 3 weeks. Firstly, we suggest that tents should be more than 5 meters from sidewalks, paths, roads, transit stops, and walkways, 100 meters from businesses, and 25 meters from active construction sites. This suggestion is for the safety of those using the pathway, to avoid having them walk on the road instead, which is not safe. That's why you put the pathway there in the first place, and also ensures the privacy of the unhoused. Reduces the likelihood of negative interactions, inappropriate observations, and the heckling that we have heard of the unhoused, not by them. Asking for the 100-meter boundary from business is important, shows equal respect for their property and their livelihood. They have invested it in the community and need our support. Setting a distance from roadways and construction site is a safety concern. Typically, the roadway through the PUC is quiet. Drivers are careful and pay close attention, but over the past 3 weeks, there has been a constant stream of gawker traffic, not paying attention to people on bicycles, on foot, or on other vehicles as they drive through the PUC, staring at the encampment, taking photos and videos, and in some cases yelling obscenities at the unhoused. Putting a buffer zone between roadways and tents is a protection for those in the encampment and anywhere else on the roadway, because we are aware that there have been incidents on Grand Ave in particular caused by poor and inattentive driving as people stare at the encampment. Secondly, create a designated portal for communication, reporting, and gathering data specific to the encampments only, separate from the 311 concerns like the City of Hamilton, that collates information and posts a weekly report online. This data traffic is helpful to determine the areas needing additional resources, but importantly, could be used to emphasize the need for improved government funding. And yes, I have contacted our MP and MPP. Public requests that you do more must take into consideration that you have less than other jurisdictions. CK's allocation of $282,822 in provincial top-up funding through COHB in early 25 was considerably lower than municipalities of similar sizes like St. Thomas and Sarnia-Lambton, and yet, in January, the CBC reported that the unhoused population in Chatham has grown by 171% since 2019. Having regularly updated data available through the portal would help everyone to have a better understanding of what is happening around the municipality and encampments, because communication after the fact played a big role in inciting the anger and frustration in the community. I have no wish to point fingers at anyone as to how or why that happened, but I think we have all learned lessons on how to do a better job with communication. So I want to end this deposition by the same way as I began, by thanking you, Mayor Caniff, and all members for putting this together. I support Mayor Caniff's proposal because I feel it responds to the concerns voiced by citizens on social media, by email, and by phone, and importantly, offers assistance to those who are ready and willing to transition to supportive housing out of encampments, both now and in the future. I don't envy the position that you are in. This is a complex and multi-layer issue. Your proposal, Mayor Caniff, is positive and a much welcome step in the right direction, and I encourage all councillors to cast their vote in support of a change. Your constituents will appreciate it.
Thank you. Next speaker is Colleen Lewis. On deck is John Foster from the Chatham Soccer Club.
Dear Mayor, councillors, community members, good evening. My name is Colleen Lewis, and I'm a longtime resident of Chatham-Kent's North Side, a dedicated social worker for over 25 years of service in our community. I also serve as the chair of Reach Out Chatham-Kent Rock. I am writing to express my strong support for the individuals in our community who are currently experiencing homelessness, particularly those residing at the Waterworks site, as well as to advocate for compassionate, systemic responses to homelessness in Chatham-Kent. This letter comes from a place of deep concern for individuals in our community who are unhoused and facing significant barriers to securing basic needs and affordable housing. We also hear the concerns of those who are comfortably housed and running businesses in the area. Rock acknowledges and understands that the housing crisis is causing discomfort and uncertainty for everyone. However, we must recognize that the root of the crisis lies within systemic failures, not the choices of individuals. No one chooses to live in an encampment. People seek out safe alternatives when they're available. Sleeping rough is not a lifestyle choice, it's a last resort. While encampments are not a solution, they are often a desperate response to survive. They serve as a visible and human reminder of the urgent need for systemic change and real housing solutions. This is not personal failure, this is a systemic issue. It is critical to approach homelessness with a trauma-informed lens, a person-centered lens. The mayor and council have the opportunity to lead with compassion and innovation, just as communities like St. Thomas have done. St. Thomas has embraced a person-centered, housing-focused approach that has shown to be more effective than enforcement-based responses. To make meaningful change, we will need intentional strategies, following the Housing First model, transitional housing options, cross-sector collaboration, housing-focused street outreach, and significant investment for affordable housing. Other communities have successfully implemented these approaches. We can do the same here in Chatham-Kent. Homelessness is not a personal failure, but the complex interplay of systemic barriers and life circumstances. Many individuals experiencing homelessness have endured significant trauma compounded by poverty, displacement, and neglect. To truly address homelessness, we must recognize the role of intersectionality, racism, sexism, gender bias, socioeconomic marginalization, and stigma related to sexual orientation. Identity contributes to perpetuating homelessness. This is our call to action. We must come together as a community rooted in dignity, empathy, and inclusion. The individuals who are unhoused are not statistics or faceless problems. These are our neighbors, our parents, our children, our friends, many struggling with mental health issues and trauma and lack of access to health care, and while trying to meet their basic needs. When those needs go unmet, coping mechanisms can escalate, sometimes into substance use, but not from weakness, but from overwhelming pain of unaddressed trauma and lack of support. This is not just a housing issue, it's a public health issue, it's a social justice issue, a shared community responsibility. I urge you to support flexible, low-barrier, person-centered approaches, including maintaining safe, stable places like the current encampment, as we work towards permanent, affordable housing solutions to provide those essential support services. Thank you for your time and consideration, and for standing in solidarity with those who need our support the most.
Next speaker is John Foster, Chatham Soccer Club. On deck is Kenan and Nancy Curts.
Hello, Your Worship and Honorable Council members. My name is John Foster, and I am the president of Chatham Soccer Club. I previously emailed my concerns to members of council and city administration. so I apologize if there's some of you that have read this or repeat. For those that didn't see it, my message is representing several hundred youth and adult travel soccer players that use the Waterworks PUC facilities on Grand Ave East. On any given night, we could have 2 to 4 competitive teams using the 2 soccer fields that Chatham Soccer had installed at the facilities around 10 years ago, in agreement with the PUC management. We have 2 full fields we use and a couple of smaller practice fields that were installed as well. All the nets and posts and equipments that are paid for by our association, all the nets, they are paid for by our association. And we pay to have the lines painted and field rolled regularly, as well as the rental of a porta potty for the players to use. Early in the spring, the fields are used for our travel team tryouts, as we do not have access to the municipal fields until May 1st. There can be as many as 5 or 6 youth teams using the facilities on any night in April, ranging in age from under 10 to adult. When it was announced that the homeless population of Chatham would be relocated to the Waterworks facilities, many teams decided they would no longer practice at that location. Many emails and messages were received from concerned parents and coaches and players. We decided to remove the porta potty to avoid the risk of homeless people using it or damaging it. We took down some of our mesh and nets so that they too would not be damaged or stolen. Many of the teams have had to be relocated as well, and we have had to try and find other suitable facilities for those teams to use for practice and exhibition games, etc. We already have a shortage of quality soccer fields in Chatham, and losing 2 more would be devastating to our program in the long term. The same concerns shared by residents of the area and the community that use the facilities for dog walking, family outings, relaxation, evening strolls, gardening, volleyball practice, golf practice, bike riding, all things that I've seen on any given night when there. The concerns are the safety of our youth and the children using the facilities. Many parents are concerned with their children using a facility with such close proximity to possible drug use exposure, drug paraphernalia hazards, lewd behavior in terms of including going to the washroom in public, fully exposed, defecating and urinating wherever they find convenient, which has already been attested to. We are worried about the safety of our vehicles parked there and the safety of driving to and from the fields, as again was mentioned, the traffic, without worrying about hitting a transit person that is not possession of all their faculties. Hopefully this location is only a very temporary solution and the transient population can be relocated to appropriate housing or to a more suitable location that is away from any youth sports and recreational facilities. Chatham Soccer Club continues to value our relationship with the municipality and hope we have your full support in finding a more practical location that will not disrupt the community's health and mental well-being by depriving us of a family-friendly green space that is both a very busy sports park and a recreational mainstay in the city. Thank you for your understanding and support.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kenan and Nancy Curts. On deck is Larry Hutchins.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come in here and let you know our concerns. We're residents of Taylor Ave. We back onto this new homeless encampment, and we're deeply concerned about this. First, we understand that solving the issues of homelessness is it's complex and it's costly. We're just one of many municipalities that are going through this right now. City and regions across the country, and even different countries, many parts of the world. However, there does need to be consideration made and dialogue happening with the people whose properties will be adversely impacted when trying to mitigate the solutions. That seems to be kind of lacking in this case. We were not informed about anything that the Waterworks property was an area compliant with the bylaws for this type of activity. Are there any other areas within the municipality that would have served equally well or possibly even better for the potential users? This is putting a lot of these people a lot further away than from the resources they need to access. Once it's determined that the residents in the encampment were going to be moving here, why was the neighborhood not informed about how their property was soon to be impacted by this? We could potentially begin, had that happen, to put up additional safety measures in place. To reiterate, there seems to be a great lack of transparency around this entire situation. I've got empathy. We have empathy for this situation, the results of the mental health and housing crisis that's going on. But our concerns for the neighborhood are significant. Our property values have been impacted. For many of us in these more unstable economic times, our net worth is often tied up in our property. Is it fair for those of us who are already struggling to have to bear a greater portion of the solution to this problem, even though it may only be temporary, and going to reduce my taxes to compensate for this? How is the potential for increased crime in our neighborhood going to be addressed? Is the encampment itself going to be patrolled? We understand that there's already been a hole cut in the fence to allow easier access out of the encampment through Taylor and back into the other subdivision behind us. Will it be the homeowner's, property owner's responsibility to increase security measures to beyond what's reasonable in order to protect the property, ensure that the insurance claims will be honored for loss and damage? Will we, as property owners that butts onto the encampment, be liable for bylaw infringements? We have a dog who, he barks an awful lot more now than what's typical of him. So am I gonna come out one day and answer a call to the door from the police complaining about my dog's barking? Is this gonna increase our taxes due to municipal coffers being bled out by providing services to the encampment, policing, things like porta-johns, garbage removal, this kind of thing? And how are health concerns being addressed? These people need access to clean water, to sanitation, mental health concerns, treatment for that. There's a lot, but lastly, we have many issues that impact us, the taxpayer directly. We're hoping that there will be at least a sense that some of them are being dealt with directly when this meeting is done, and that the rest continue to be worked on in order for us to feel safe, respected in our own homes. No matter what our socioeconomic level is, we're the same as everybody else, Anyway, thank you for your time. Thank you.
Next speaker is Larry Hutchins. On deck is Liz Valley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. I'm here tonight to present my deputation on the issue of the homeless encampment on Grand Ave East in Chatham. After taking time to review the ideas presented by both Mayor Caniff and Councillor Bondi, I find that the good concepts, and they are good concepts, both are lacking. One throws every idea that Housing Services has against the wall to see what sticks. There is no timetable, funding sources, or organizational responsibility given to the broad-based plan. The other, though laser-focused, does not take into account the logistical nightmare this would cause for policing, fire, EMS, social services, and delivering charitable aid. Though moving the encampment is desired by the neighborhood, that it would only mean that the problem is shuffled off to another neighborhood. There needs to be immediate action taken to address the legitimate concerns and fears that the neighborhood has. And for full disclosure, I live 2 blocks away from the encampment. First, policing patrols need to double in the neighborhood to prevent open drug usage, petty theft, vandalism, trespassing, and public instances of urination defecation. This is crime. It should and must be dealt with as such. An increase in police service has a set precedent in the Tecumseh Park neighborhood when the homeless shelter was moved to Victoria Park Place. The CKPS has sufficient funding to supply this service as they are currently funded for more officers than they currently have on the force. Second, there needs to be 24-hour security at the encampment. With past history of fires, medical emergencies, open drug use, and dogs roaming free, there is a need for security to be there to ensure that the safety of the residents of both the encampment and the neighborhood are met. The precedent is set in the tiny cabins, which have 24-hour security. The costs can be funded from strategic reserves. Third, there should be regular reports to council concerning the neighborhood concerns to administration and what actions have been taken. This can be coordinated by housing services. Finally, I recommend to council that a committee of council be formed to deal with homelessness and housing affordability. This would allow stakeholders and citizens a better voice in the process and hopefully more proactive process. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker is Liz Valley. On deck is Lorie Bailey from Hope Haven.
Owe no one anything except to love one another. For the one who loves another has fulfilled the law. That's Romans 13:8. Christ calls us to love our neighbors as ourselves. Therefore, Romans 13:10 states, love does no wrong to our neighbor. Love, therefore, is the fulfillment of the law. What is going on in our community and throughout our country is not love. The issues that we are having with homelessness, addiction, and mental health has become a crisis, and we are all failing each other. What our governments have tried so far is not working, and this is clear. I'm going to skip a bunch of my stuff because obviously the safety things have been addressed, and the young mother who did her deputation a few deputations ago, I can't better explain it than that. Yeah. I'll start with doing what is right. This encampment is a harmful situation. It's harmful to the residents that live in and love that neighborhood. I live there, by the way. Selfishly, I'm mad because I walk Ralph there very, very frequently, and now I can't do that. So yes, it's selfish, first world problem, I get that, but it's very sad that I can't walk my dog because as a woman, I don't feel safe there, and I will not have my kids walk through there either. This is harmful to the people who have worked so hard, like the deputations we've heard, to build a nice life for themselves. It's harmful to everyone who is now on guard and no longer feel safe in their homes. These encampments, they're also harmful to the very people that are living there, guys. Like, this is not what's best for them. This is not love, and it's not loving to have people live in this lifestyle. The issue of homelessness and addiction is massive. It's a massive issue, and small solutions are not going to fix it. It's not going to make an impact. Nobody wants this in their neighborhood. Nobody wants these encampments in their neighborhood. I personally, though, do not wish to get rid of it in order to pass it off to somebody else. That's not fair either. So real change is needed, like actual real change, guys. The municipality of Chatham-Kent. I have said on multiple occasions, and for multiple reasons, that CK has so many opportunities to lead the way and become a shining example for other municipalities, and I still believe that. However, it would require a complete shift in mindset from most of our council and most of the municipality. Guys, we're losing it. You're losing faith in the people. You keep making these decisions over and over again that waste our money, that waste our resources. We have a crisis here. This is a crisis. This is an emergency. And we're not the only ones, as has been mentioned already. We gotta stop. We gotta stop the wasteful spending. We should be putting a halt on everything that's not an emergency. We have $53 million to spend on a new government building, but we have a crisis here. We need to rethink the way we're doing things. You guys, I believe in you, honestly, I do. Gather up your other municipalities and go after the province, go after the federal government. Get mad. You gotta start fighting. We do it. How many times have I spoke up, right? Whether it's popular or not, stop trying to be popular, start speaking up, fight, because we have the potential to be that shining example and to set a precedence for the province and across this country. But we have to band together and do this. We can't just shuffle these people around. It's not fair. It's not love, it's not compassionate to enable them and keep encouraging them to live that lifestyle. You're right, nobody wants it. Nobody wants to live like that. But they're not gonna magically do it on their own. Thank you.
Next speaker is Lorie Bailey from Hope Haven. On deck is Mary Lou Mushink.
I'm Lorie Bailey, and I am the General Manager for Chatham Hope Haven. Hope Haven opened its doors in 2016, and at that time we were the only shelter addressing homelessness in Chatham-Kent. Since then, we have evolved to meet the needs of the homeless population as well as our community neighbors. With support from taxpayer dollars, we currently offer a day program that provides life-saving essentials like water, food, a break from the weather. We also offer showers, laundry, housing support, and intervention from the community paramedic. Inside the Haven is a community of people that care about each other. Our vision is to be an avenue of self-sufficiency for those experiencing poverty, precarious housing, and/or homelessness. In 2024, we had almost 30,000 visits to our program. I consider myself to be an expert on the subject of homelessness. Many of our clients stay in the Grand Ave encampment, and their feedback is that they don't love it any more than their neighbors do. They are further away from services that they desperately need for survival. The idea that moving them, again, even further away will help anything is absurd. How many times are we going to uproot them before we realize that this continuous waste of resources invested in moving people does not work? As I stand here and talk, people are again camping in parking lot 9. Our efforts to shuffle and move and sanction encampments have proven completely fruitless. We aren't fixing a thing. I've lived in Chatham-Kent for 33 years. I raised my family here. I'm sure that I'll be buried here. I pay my taxes here, and I'm very aware of what it is to be a concerned citizen here because I am one. I get being angry. I'm really angry too. I'm angry at every single system that these folks rely on to live being broken. I'm angry that the very best that they have, maybe, is a tent in an open, hot field, and they're chastised for that. I'm sorry to the neighbors that see they're arguing and fighting. I'm sorry to the neighbors that see people going to the bathroom, changing their clothes, crying and yelling. Those are things you'd see in my house too. The difference being that I have walls and they maybe have canvas. I don't know what the solution is. It's the last thing I think of every night and often the first thing I think of in the morning. What is the answer to this problem? How do we help people that are battling mental health get to a place of accepting services that don't exist? How do we convince people that there is a life beyond their life of addiction when there is nowhere to send them for help for addiction? Get angry at that. Move emotion about that. Have you ever made a choice that I wouldn't approve of? I'm sure that I've made choices that you wouldn't approve of. I've lost my job. I've lost my home. I lost my husband to addiction. The difference between me and some of the folks that we're talking about tonight is that I had support, thank God. I had people I could count on and places I could go to help me cope with my tragedy and my trauma. But I certainly didn't always do the right thing. And I would harbor a guess that every single one of us can think about a time when our bad choice could have resulted in something terrible. So, do people who make bad choices deserve to be herded like cattle and isolated from the things every human being needs to survive? Again? People will die. Rest assured, people will die if we don't fix the problem at its core. And that fix does not include shuffling them off further down the road away from the help they need, further from the services and program that we as taxpayers are already paying for. Hope Haven is doing its best. Rock Mission is doing its best. The municipality of Chatham-Kent is certainly doing its best. We are all just trying to keep people alive, and I'm sure that nobody here wants to live in a community that doesn't prioritize people's lives over everything else. We have hidden the homeless in this community in church basements for a long time. There's just too many, and we cannot do it anymore. If you move them even further away from the services that they need to survive, what do you really think is going to happen? Some of the services that they need are not portable. A reprieve from the elements is not something you can bring to them in some remote location. That makes some of the taxpayers happy. I don't know the answer, but I know this. If we move them further away, if we continue to do that, if we continue to look at people as a blight on the society that they live in, that their families live in, and we don't find a way to address the services and systems that have let all of us down, there will either be more people fighting the battle to survive, or there will be more people losing the battle to survive. You do not represent me if you think moving people out of town and away from all of us that are working so hard to help them is the solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lou Mushink, and on deck is Michael Bolahan.
Mayor Caniff and council members, thank you for this opportunity to address this matter. I live in the area affected by this encampment, and I write on behalf of my family and our experience. The location of this encampment has a serious and devastating impact on both the residents, including numerous children and seniors, as well as the businesses close by. We as a community are habitual users of this space, from seniors that live right next door and across the street for regular exercise safely, to residents walking dogs, children riding bikes, playing ball, practicing soccer, and to some who just sit to admire the beauty of the place. This all ended abruptly on July 11th, when, unbeknownst to anyone here, tents were moved from previous downtown location to 325 Grand Avenue. Immediately, our beautiful community was turned upside down, now dealing with attempted break-ins, beer bottles, graffiti, taking on local businesses, and indecent exposure, urinating and defecating, as we've already heard, on public property, not using the washrooms provided, and having to call the police for what appeared to be frozen stance, for the lack of a better term, not knowing whether they needed the medical attention or not. Children who live in this area have become accustomed to using the gate on Winfield to ride bikes in a safe area. I witnessed 2 just this week, under the age of 10, riding the other evening. This is not for children to witness, experience, or be exposed to. A dear friend who uses the scooter for mobility herself uses this green belt as access to our neighborhood. However, it's no longer safe for her to do so. In fact, there is no way for her to access our neighborhood safely now. Grand Avenue is a busy 4-lane roadway with this encampment right on the edge. I personally had to slam on my brakes heading west on Grand Avenue to avoid hitting 2 individuals who had no idea whether they were on the sidewalk or the roadway. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Our property values will plummet, and before anyone tries to say otherwise, supporting with surveys or not, Please know it's common sense. If anyone's purchasing a home and is offered the same house here next to the encampment or elsewhere in the city, the value will be drastically less. This encampment must be moved before further damage is done or worse. Our rights need to be protected as well. This problem is not new, but how do we deal with it needs to be a new protocol. The status quo is not working. I agree, Liz. Yes, we can blame higher levels of government and pass the buck, but we can also be accountable and use what we do have to the best of our abilities in a timely manner. Let's consider consolidating our services, cutting costs, and reaching peak potential in servicing those in need. Rock Mission and Hope Haven can be housed under the same roof and close to the people in need. Our suggestion for relocating the encampment would be a prime location of the municipal parking lot next to the tiny homes between Park Ave and Park Street. I understand the homes have a few spots available, however, rules apply regarding drug use. I also understand if more were required, we could build them, but maybe these funds could be used immediately instead. Why not have them right next door? What incentive that would be to do better? As people transition out of the tiny homes to society, more can move right on in. And yes, the lot is apparently brown land, which needs further cleaning. If I'm referring to that properly, let's do it. It wouldn't take that much effort. Put some structures in for shade and showers, etc., for cleanliness. And consider purchasing that home at 6 Hislop. Purchase price is only $220,000. What a great place for Rock Mission and Hope Haven to move right on in after renovations are complete. Right next door to those who need you the most. Chatham-Kent is in self-destruction mode at this time, and we need to get on board and do our best to attract new business and families to our area. Having encampments interfering with either residents' property, value, safety, or business is an absolute no-go. I would like to thank Mike Bondi for his tireless efforts in trying to come up with solutions and researching other areas in comparison. I also would like to give a shout out to Mayor Caniff. Thank you for all your hard work on this matter and for coming up with viable solutions to the immediate problem and providing a very detailed, sensible motion this evening. I urge all of you, Council, to vote in favor of, and let's make Chatham-Kent the leader it is. Supercat speed, folks.
Next speaker is Michael Bolahan. On deck is Renee Janioli.
My name is Michael Bolahan. I'm a volunteer with St. Agnes Soup Kitchen and Neighbor Link. On my 41st birthday, I was ordained a priest for the Diocese of London. 15 years ago, I received my dispensation, and I'm a happily married man. I stand before you not merely as a concerned citizen, but as one who believes in the power of a transformed community. A community shaped not just by policy and protocol, but a deep spiritual courage. There's much to commend in Chatham-Kent's evolving response to encampments, the encampment protocol, the restraint shown in enforcement, the collaborations with Rock Missions, Neighbor Link, and other outreach efforts, and the hopeful plans for transitional housing all point to a municipality trying to act with care, even under strain. These are not the signs of indifference or neglect. They are signs of intention. And yet with these efforts, there is pushback in public, from systems, from within ourselves. Why? Because a spiritual leader, Richard Ward, reminds me, the false self, the ego-driven part of us obsessed with control, comfort, and certainty will always resist the presence of those who disrupt our illusions of safety and prosperity. Encampments do just that. They confront us with the failure of our systems, the fragility of human life, and the lie that success and worth is the same thing. We have not acted with intentional bad will. We have hoped the ego, the false self, could be convinced to live out the gospel of the common good. But the ego will always choose exclusion over encounter, security over solidarity. This is why there is pushback against encampments wherever they appear, because deep down, the ego desires prosperity for oneself and oneself only. The work before us then is not only to manage a housing crisis, but to undergo a conversion of heart. If one were to assess Chatham-Kent today, it might be given a B+, A-. We are thoughtful, we are sincere, but the greater challenge lies ahead of us. Can we become not just responsive, but transformed? Let us not stop at plans and protocols. Let us speak with clarity to our provincial and federal partners. This cannot be done alone. Let us listen to those with lived experience, not out of charity, but out of justice. And let us look inward, asking whether the parts of us that resist this work are not just logistical, but spiritual. Jesus confronted the idols of power, prestige, and possession. We must do the same with policy, within church, within self. Love looks like something. And right now in Chatham-Kent, may it look like accompaniment. May it look like the hard, holy work of laying down ego for the sake of the community. I asked AI, what can greater accompaniment look like? AI said, accompaniment will practice authentically, when practiced authentically, requires a shift from service delivery to mutual presence, shared vulnerability, and relational solidarity. What greater accompaniment can look like for the church community? Maybe beyond food banks to sustained relationships. The gospel demands relationship. Stand in solidarity through advocacy and action, not just for programs, but for presence. For the government institution, support bridge roles, fund long-term outreach programs, wraparound care, and community hubs that prioritize connection through peer support roles that build trust over time. For secular groups or nonprofit, through a lens of accompaniment, train and mentor volunteers in humility and listening. Offer tools for volunteers to walk alongside, not above or ahead. For the individual citizen, accompaniment requires time, attention, and willingness to stop for another. It's inconvenient by nature. Reflect and learn. Let your worldview be changed. Let yourself be changed by relationship. For Indigenous circles, the circle does not isolate the wounded. It integrates them into community for restoration. Healing is communal, not individual. The wound and its repair belong to us all. We mend together. As I close, true accompaniment dissolves the illusion of separateness. Whether through a circle, a care team, a shared meal, or a quiet walk together, it is always a step towards collective healing. How do we heal? Community resilience. It builds bonds beyond professional support, restoring the village around each person to walk with instead of simply doing for. Thank you.
Next speaker is Renee Janioli. On deck is Scott Ruse.
Okay. Good evening. Mayor, councilors, fellow community members. For those who don't know, my name is Renee Janioli. I'm the Executive Director at ROC, Reach Out Chatham-Kent. And on behalf of my team and the community members we work with, we are here to say to all of you, we hear you, and we are angry too. We are angry that more and more people in our community are forced to live without basic human right of safe, stable housing. We're angry that the weight of decades of underfunding in housing, healthcare, mental health, and addiction services has landed in our streets, parks, neighborhoods, community spaces, and now here in these council chambers. Our ask of you tonight is to be angry with us. Some community members are expressing anger at the wrong people and about the wrong things. Instead, be angry with the systems that are designed to keep people stuck on the margins of society and repeatedly fail our community's most vulnerable. Be angry with the decisions at the provincial and federal levels to systematically defund evidence-based upstream solutions in favor of short-term political gain and profit. Directing our anger at people living in encampments is misplaced and harmful to us all. Anger towards council, towards the municipality and the services working to keep community members safe and alive is also pointing in the wrong direction. No one chooses to live in an encampment if they have safe alternatives. Sleeping rough is not a choice, it's the only option left. When hearing the various generalizations carelessly thrown around about people living in encampments, please consider why these narratives are widely promoted as truth. Statements like,
they're making their own choices, or they don't want to follow the rules, or they should just get a job, are the product of shallow thinking and have been disproven repeatedly by years of research. It's too simple and frankly dangerous politicking to repeat these various generalizations that are overly simplistic and dismissive in nature. We should be following the truth, truths that are backed up by evidence and research, not rage bait videos or anger-driven rhetoric. So let's quickly look at some facts and discuss why some of the options on the table tonight need further discussion before decision-making happens. People experiencing homelessness are not inherently dangerous. In fact, countless research studies show that they are far more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators. The narrative that encampments are dangerous too often justifies evictions, enforcement, and displacement. These are actions that destabilize lives, cut people off from supports, deepen trauma, cost our community thousands, and are ultimately ineffective. Here are our thoughts about the motions on the table tonight. Number one, if you choose to enact the 100-meter rule, you will be forcing the encampment into one location, as Chatham-Kent does not have large green spaces that would offer other viable choices. This location is no way ideal for emergency services, outreach services, and would end up endangering more lives. One arbitrary number based on what works in other communities should never outweigh the safety and lives of any community member. And number two, enacting a daytime ban on encampments would take away the ability for any outreach services to continue their work. It will scatter folks to the winds to find shelter from weather, somewhere to store belongings in multiple neighborhoods and businesses. This will only destabilize many of the folks and many of our jobs and make our jobs at Rock next to impossible. There is a different way for our community to do what we do with what little resources we have. Compassion asks us to pause and stay with our feelings of discomfort to ask, is there a more generous way to see this situation? Not all behavior that makes us uncomfortable is unsafe. I'm going to repeat that. Not all behavior that makes us uncomfortable is unsafe. To enact the change we are all seeking, we must ask ourselves whether someone poses a genuine threat or if it's just discomfort that we are feeling in seeing poverty on display. Karen Robinette said it quite plainly in a recent social media post. I hope she forgives me for quoting her about the encampment move. She said, selfishly, I'm glad it's gone, so I won't be reminded of this example of societal failure. But at the same time, I'm sorry it's gone, so I won't be reminded of this example of societal failure, if you know what I'm saying. The truth is, this meeting will not deliver the transformational change we all hope for. Neighbors, please know you're not alone. Fight with us. The important members of our community living in the encampment want what you all want, safe, thriving community where everyone has a place to live and belong. The real solutions are simple: investments in supportive housing, culturally grounded mental health care, trauma-informed outreach, and upstream prevention. Remember, people living in encampments are not them, they're us, and they are worth the effort. Thanks, everybody.
Next speaker is Scott Ruse. On deck is Terry Coatsworth.
Good evening, Mayor Caniff, esteemed councillors, and fellow citizens of Chatham-Kent. My name is Scott Ruse. On June 17th, I was the victim of an arson on Grand Avenue East. I sit here tonight with 2 shattered ankles, in a wheelchair, and a person who is 1 step away from living in the very encampment we speak of tonight. I need you to listen for the next 5 minutes to these words. We gather tonight under the shadow of a crisis that demands our attention, but our profound moral courage. The issue of homeless encampments in our city is not merely an urban planning challenge. It is a stark, undeniable reflection of our collective humanity and our responsibility to every soul within our community. We are here tonight to discuss proposals that, if enacted, would not only fail to address this crisis, but would actively deepen the suffering for our most vulnerable neighbors. To demand that human beings already stripped of so much abandon their meager possessions, their blankets, their medications, their identification, and the very last vestiges of personal security is an act of profound cruelty. To treat people as to treat people as disposable, as their lives transient inconveniences, and their few belongings as refuse. This is not governance. This is an assault on dignity. It is a policy that inactively undermines any fragile stability these individuals might possess, making it impossible for them to maintain hygiene, health, or hope. How can we as council even contemplate such a dehumanizing decree? We must remember that every individual in these encampments is a Canadian citizen, endowed with the fundamental rights under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. For example, Section 7, the right to live life, liberty, and security of the person. Section 15, which enshrines equality rights. These proposed bylaws disproportionately target and discriminate against vulnerable groups solely based on their socioeconomic status. To criminalize that very act of existing when one has nowhere else to go is not only unconstitutional, is morally reprehensible. Courts across the nation have affirmed that denying access to shelter or safe spaces can indeed violate these fundamental rights. This is not our first attempt at such a punitive approach. This will be the third time in the last year that these encampments have been dismantled by this municipality. The local residents are demanding that this be dismantled. I reiterate, where the hell would you like them to go? It screams NIMBYism. On the site of the ground of the PUC, a vast open area surrounded by fencing with access to a community garden. Yes, it's highly visible, a reminder of our municipality and local residents, but that visibility is not a problem that's solved by erasure. It is a stark, undeniable testament to how we as a community have failed these individuals. It is a visible wound, a constant call to action, and instead of healing it, we're choosing to avert our eyes. We do not have to perpetuate this cycle of neglect and displacement. Other communities facing similar challenges have chosen a path of compassion, advocacy, and human rights. Cities like Calgary, Edmonton, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat have embraced a housing-first model, recognizing that providing stable housing with integrated support services are not only more humane, but ultimately more cost-effective than endless cycles of crisis management. These communities that engage directly with their encampment residents, treating them as partners in solution building is paramount. The best practices from across Canada and beyond demonstrate that effective solutions involved make a temporary, designated, and supported safe outdoor space with access to basic sanitation, water, and well-trained security as a bridge to permanent housing. This provides stability while long-term solutions are being developed. Investing, not talking about investing, but truly investing in affordable housing, expanding access to mental health and addiction services, recognizing that these are the root causes, not just symptoms. Implementing multidisciplinary outreach teams that could build trust and connect individuals to services rather than simply enforcing bylaws. Everything moves at the speed of trust, and you wonder why this community is at a standstill. In conclusion, councillors, the path before you tonight is clear. You can choose a continued failed strategy of displacement and dehumanization, or you can choose to deal with empathy, foresight, and a commitment to fundamental rights for every person in Chatham-Kent. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Terry Coatsworth. On deck is Tyler McKG. No, just push the button right in front. There you go.
There we go. Sorry. As you heard, my name is Terry Coatsworth. I live on Winfield Crescent. Our property backs onto the PUC, and our raised deck looks down onto the encampment. Obviously, the situation with the encampment has become increasingly stressful for all parties involved. It's escalating daily with gawkers, provocateurs, accumulating resentment, and I feel a lot of it could have been avoided if there were proper inclusion and communication with the residents during the beginning stages of this move. We've missed a real opportunity to bring education and empathy along with ideas, collaboration, and problem solving to the table. Instead, as residents, we found ourselves with fear, suspicion, frustration, and even those of us who have strong empathy and understanding of the complex needs and issues surrounding chronic homelessness, we're left feeling a sense of dread about the lack of transparency, reaction, and accountability from administration. We were left grappling for answers, reaching out to anyone who might help us make sense of what to expect and to imagine how it might impact our lives going forward. I talked to Renee for a while. She recognized that the community was not ready for this. Speaking with neighbors and seeing comments online, I can say with confidence that we were not sure there was an adequate plan, and as it turns out, there isn't. On Tuesday, July 8th, 6 days ahead of the eviction deadline, tents started arriving. Our counselors could not offer much information as they were not informed. Our inquiries about what the boundaries would be were left unanswered. We found the protocol ourselves that was passed November 4th last year. The 10-meter boundary was shocking and inappropriate to me. We researched other municipal guidelines, protocols, and instructions on how to include community and found out that including the homeless community was of paramount concern, which I agree with. Nowhere did we see anything about the importance of including the existing community. We watched the number of tents grow steadily, and we were alarmed that a heat and smoke advisory were not being addressed. Shuttles to the cooling center, which is a 35-minute walk away, did not arrive. Porta potties didn't show up until the 9th day. On the 10th day, the dumpster arrived. In the meantime, garbage accumulation, human waste on the site was a result, of course. Wood, propane tanks, gasoline canisters, debris, drug paraphernalia have all been photographed by people and reported. There's no access to fresh water, hygiene stations in the area, which means that residents are resorting to seeking sources from nearby private property. Those of us with pools are concerned. We don't want to see anybody harmed on our property, but we understand that could happen. It's realistic. Our property was broken into last year. There was no homeless encampment, but fences don't keep people out. Right? Our pool pump was stolen. It's accessible even if you lock. Requests by several wards, 6 councillors for a stakeholders meeting were deemed as unnecessary. We reached out to our MP and our MPP. People began to feel powerless and disrespected. We were labeled as NIMBYistic, which is kind of ironic because as the people closest to this encampment, we're seeing this crisis unfold and escalate daily. It's not going away. The news said probably temporary. They're going to go to the tiny cabins. They're not. There aren't supports for this clientele. We're failing them. We have a bird's eye view and a constant reminder that it's probably going to get larger. This encampment's not getting smaller. Rock Mission's Who to Call list includes direction to 311 for the cleanup of needles, sharps, garbage, abandoned belongings, human waste. It also offers useful numbers for non-emergency police and community paramedics. We weren't given that. Nobody was prepared to address these obviously predictable situations that we might encounter. We've missed an opportunity to educate people, to mobilize for advocacy. We are despairing for the future of that space and of the people that are living there. We had to lobby long and hard to get this meeting. It should have been different. We should have felt like we're part of helping, not feeling like we're the enemy in a situation which is terrible for all. We need to put pressure on the province, and without data, they're not logging 311 calls. We can't speak to our need if we can't prove what our need is. I'm not going to harass City Council by calling you every day and not have a log of why this is important. Data speaks. We need to contact provincial. We need to rally the troops for our municipality, for our people. And I'm not asking you to take sides. There aren't sides, there's just people. We're people too. We live there. We could have been included.
That's time.
We weren't.
Thank you.
Do better.
On deck is Tyler McKG, and, sorry, up now is Tyler. On deck is John Barrett on the Zoom call.
Do we have the picture?
Meredith may try to get it up for you.
Okay, thank you. I'll get started. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Tyler McKG, and I'm here representing 4 different local groups. The Scrub Hub Car and Dog Wash, Bees Knees Ice Cream, Chatham Youth Beach Volleyball, and Chatham Youth Soccer. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, not just on behalf of these organizations, but the hundreds of families, youth, and small business owners directly impacted by the recent relocation of the homeless encampment beside our property. So thank you for putting up the map. Just to give you an idea, it's a little hard to see, but we're right across the street. Thank you. Right across the street, so this impacts us directly. There are many opinions on how to solve this issue, and while I do have strong beliefs on the right path forward, I'm going to use my time tonight to focus on the very real and personal impact this encampment has had, is already having on our businesses, our employees, our kids, and the community. We'll start with the dog and car wash, located directly across the street from the new encampment. This is a predominantly cash-based business with coin-operated machines that have been targeted repeatedly over the past 2 weeks. Since the encampment moved in, we've seen a massive increase in attempted break-ins, vandalism, and harassment. Visiting customers have shared their hesitations about being harassed while in a vulnerable spot while they're cleaning their cars or their pets. We've made dozens of calls to police, many in the middle of the night, but the problem still persists even during the day. I've personally confronted individuals attempting to break in into our different machines in our mechanical room while I was standing just a few feet away. These aren't customers. This is private property, and we no longer feel safe on it. We've literally had an issue every single day since the tents started moving over there. Vandalism and attempted break-ins have already cost us into the thousands, just enough of a pain in the butt that the insurance deductibles won't cover it. This comes right out of our pockets. Now let's talk about the ice cream trailer. It's our seasonal business that operates on the same site. We employ 9 teenagers and 2 adults, all of whom have become increasingly anxious about the safety risks posed by the steady stream of unpredictable foot traffic from this encampment. We've already had multiple incidents requiring police involvement. As a result, our sales have dropped significantly. This is supposed to be our busiest and most profitable time of the year, and instead we're considering shutting it down to protect the kids that work there. Our property taxes at this location are over $12,000 a year, and if this is the new reality, we're expected to accept what's the municipality going to do about our taxes? Are we going to cut our taxes in half or more? Moving on to Chatham Youth Beach Volleyball. We run weekday programming for youth aged 12 to 18, right behind the car wash. We currently have more than 130 athletes registered, including my own kids. Despite our best efforts to ensure their safety, we've had multiple parents express concern. A few have already pulled their kids out of the program until this is solved. They don't feel safe, and honestly, I can't blame them. Finally, Chatham Youth Soccer. We've got a group of young ladies here. Do you want to stand up? I'm so happy they're here to see how this works and how we can make change. Thank you, ladies. For years, local teams have used the nearby fields behind the water treatment plant. This season, my daughter's 15U team has already canceled practices at this location, and with Chatham Soccer, they're scrambling to find other space elsewhere. It's just simply too dangerous to pass through the area anymore. I know there are many kids and other teams who practice here who are trying to deal with the same challenges. Many kids from the surrounding neighborhoods walk to practice, which is also not an option anymore. Thankfully, nothing catastrophic has happened at this new location yet. No fires, significant assaults, or fatalities that we know of yet. But how long until that changes? How long until a child is hurt or worse? And when that day comes, who's going to be responsible? On a bright note, the police response has been swift and very professional in all situations. So I want to thank them for not having to resort to vigilante justice yet. So I appreciate that. I'm not here just to complain about these things. I'm here that council shows some leadership. If we as a municipality don't have the backbone to address this issue quickly and permanently, then what message are we sending to other young families, entrepreneurs, and volunteers that are trying to build something here? If the mayor and councillors decide not to fix this problem as soon as possible, the message will be clear. I know we're big, like, invest in CK. This is showing guys like me and many others a different story. Speaking on behalf of all these groups that are actively investing their time, money, and energy, I urge you to act. If we want Chatham-Kent to be a safe, thriving place for kids and families, then we cannot allow encampments to take root beside youth programs, small businesses, and residential neighborhoods. This needs to be addressed immediately before the problem gets bigger or someone gets hurt. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go to the Zoom deputation, John Barrett.
Hello, am I in?
Yes, we can hear you, John. Thank you.
Okay, first off, I'd like to apologize if I have any technical issues. Secondly, I'd like to thank Council and Mayor Caniff. And before I go any further, I would like to thank the one from ABI, New Beginnings. Please don't be discouraged. I have personal invested interest in what you do there, and it's well worthwhile for our community. To my neighbors, Amanda, Terry, we are all in the same boat, and we know what you're saying. For the soccer fields, we all feel the same way. I took the approach to not talk about the impacts I've seen, as I figured many people would bring that up today, as they have. The questions I have are, do we have actual bylaws in place? I saw our encampment protocol, and I'm wondering, are those voted on bylaws that are now in paper? And if so, what are those numbers? And I've heard from different sources, as we've all proven, there's not a lot of information handed to us early, but I've heard from several sources, including municipal and law enforcement, that many of the residents of the encampment are not from Chatham-Kent. So many neighbors have done a lot of research and found that we have the least stringent encampment protocols out of all of our neighboring communities, meaning Lambton-Kent, or Lambton, Essex, and Middlesex counties. And do you acknowledge that by having less stringent guidelines, we are probably creating a homeless attraction for bringing residents to our community? Because a lot of people are saying these are our community members, and from what I'm understanding, I don't think a lot of them are our community members. So I think that's perpetuating our problem. And my last question was, this encampment is meters away from our municipal water supply, which is at very real risk of contamination to our drinking water for our entire community. For obvious reasons, I don't want to explain the dire consequences of and ease of access, but right across, like one fence, and they are in the municipal water supply. So some of my resolutions, please take this with a grain of salt. I absolutely do not know what the solution to this problem is, but I do believe that it's pertinent we enact bylaws that are at minimum as stringent as our neighboring municipalities to prevent the further migration of individuals from outside of Chatham-Kent to our community. I feel that PUC property should have extra protections due to the proximity of our Chatham municipal water supply. And I don't know the facts on who these people are and what opportunities they've had for getting out of the situations they're in. But I do feel that being beside soccer fields, a community garden, and walking trails that are used on a daily basis does not make a suitable location. And on my final point, I would like to say that if we do vote and pass bylaws, we need to determine how these bylaws are enforced. And I believe the police have taken a non-enforcement approach unless through court order. So we need bylaw enforcement that will actually have some meaningful way to enforce these bylaws. My son had a basketball net taken away due to a bylaw infringement that had overhung the road. And his result, I was afraid to tell him, and his result was, Dad, imagine being that guy, the guy that steals joy from children. And I said, we've got bylaw enforcement that can enforce those laws, but we don't seem to be able to enforce any other bylaws that we blatantly see going wrong in our community and right out in our backyards. And one of the points I do want to say about something earlier, I have seen some attitude from my own thing. I was part of I signed the petition that went on there and shared it, and people accused us of the not in my backyard attitude. The NIMBY attitude was mentioned a couple times tonight. I want to tell you from the things I have witnessed, I don't believe that belongs in anyone's backyard. I don't believe anyone in our community should be subject to the things that we are seeing going on. And if you're not contributing to solving the problem, then you're perpetuating the problem. And I believe that the encampments are probably the most dangerous place for some of these people to be. There is a case in Hamilton, Higsma versus Hamilton, where they've studied and said the most dangerous place that an endangered person could be is in the encampment, with exposure to drugs, exposure to assaults, exposure to crime. I think that creates the most dangerous environment that our most vulnerable people are kind of forced into. So I do not know what the solution is. I do not want negative feedback, and I would like to be part of the solution if I can, but I don't think this is the right way we're going about it. So I'm happy to help out in any way that I can.
Thank you. And just to read into the record, we had 11 deputations that were sent by email only from Brandon Ball of the Alzheimer's Society, Christine Hewlett, Corinne and Mark Eastcott, Canadian Shelter Transformation Network, Ken Bell, Cody McPherson, Laird Brush from Westover, Robert Janioli, Sandra Jones, Sherry Saunders from CK Community Health Centers, and Salik Lotham. And I also wanted to mention that Council, I forwarded you a deputation this afternoon that was forwarded to me to share. And efforts to be transparent, I emailed that to Council today, and I did receive a list of the signatures, unconfirmed, but there were 1,840 signatures, 1,440 unconfirmed Chatham-Kent addresses, and 400 unconfirmed signatures from outside Chatham-Kent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We called this special meeting, and I want to kind of go a little over why did we do this? Why do we have a special meeting? And you know, I took some notes, but I think that to summarize it most is those 28 deputations. We've heard all sorts of varying degrees of opinion and thoughts on this, the biggest issue we face in Chatham-Kent, housing. How do we make sure everyone has housing? The basic rights, how do we provide basic rights? We've heard all that. And I wish I could stand here tonight and say, we've got the solutions. Let's do it. Let's fix it. The world is trying to do that. And as we meet here, the purpose of this meeting is to move ourselves down that continuum a little bit to say, how do we as a community get a little better at doing what we're doing? And we strive, ultimately, the solution is housing. House everybody. And how do we get that? How do we get there? So I want to thank the 28 people that took the time to do up their deputations. I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening in online to hear this discussion, because it's so important that we have it. And it's an opportunity for us to talk and hear different opinions, but as well, we're going to have an opinion or a presentation shortly that's going to talk about kind of the specifics of things. So we can make sure we're all falling back on the same actual facts. We've heard a lot of great things, deputations. So at this point, we had to do a few things to make sure that we can actually proceed on with this. So we had no time for report and recommendations for the public to see, therefore asking council to waive notice on our motions this evening. This requires a 2/3 vote. Can I get someone to move the, Councillor Finn, Councillor Anderson second? And any questions regarding that? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
Councillor Sakachi's not here. Oh, here he comes. Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0. And just to remind everyone, Councillor Brock McGregor is absent, so we have 17 votes this evening.
Okay, and in addition, on November 4th, 2024, Council approved the encampment response strategy. Therefore, we require a 2/3 vote for a motion to reconsider. Can I get someone to move that, please? Councillor Doyle and Councillor C. McGregor. Any questions relating to that? Seeing none, we'll put it to vote.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All vote, oops. Thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Okay, so as we're going to proceed on, we're going to have a presentation from administration. And at that point, I'm going to ask council, any questions you have, that's the opportunity to ask them once we get administration up, so that we can streamline the rest. So when we actually start talking about the motions themselves, that we are talking about that. I want to be able to limit everybody for 5 minutes because we could be here for all hours of the evening. We need to make sure that everyone's heard. So from that perspective as well, I put something forward, motion forward, and Councillor Bondi did as well. So I shared the information to the public through media that I'd be bringing a motion this evening. Therefore, I'll be stepping away from the chair and asking Councillor Harrigan to preside over the meeting. I understand Councillor Bondi also has a motion, and he's welcome to raise those as amendments for voting if he wishes to. So when Councillor Harrigan takes here, you can discuss and how we're going to deal with yours as well. With that, I'll pass it over to who's doing the presentation? Kim? Okay, I'll pass it over to Kim. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, community members. My name is Kim Crew. I am the Director of Housing Services for the municipality of Chatham-Kent. The clicker's not working, so I'm going to ask Meredith to slide advance me as we go, just so everyone knows. So next slide, please. Homelessness in Ontario has been a growing crisis since 2020 in the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of exponential increases in the cost of living, stagnant or frozen incomes, lengthy wait lists or inaccessible support services, and also a continually evolving toxic drug supply, the number of people experiencing homelessness continues to grow to numbers previously thought of as unimaginable. Administration has been actively working with community partners and reporting back to council and community on this issue since 2018. There are numerous reports and presentations that have supported previous decisions and recommendations. That said, we appreciate that not every community member has the time or interest to follow every municipal issue. And so for today's purposes, we're going to spend a bit of time just discussing how CK has found itself in the position that we are in today. From there, I'm going to discuss just a little bit about the current encampment protocols. I'm going to have some administration help me to talk about the legal challenges that municipalities are facing, in addition to the limited authority and the ability that municipalities have in solving this crisis. To be clear, though, to start this, no municipal staff or community partner is in support of encampments. They have become a necessity for individuals that cannot access the supports and services that they need, but they should not be considered a community norm, which is frankly what has and is happening across the province of Ontario. Today's presentation is intended to report facts. They are not and should not be construed as endorsements in any way. We are facing very complex issues that are interconnected with many others. Any action has consequences. Some are known, some are unknown. This is why no community has found a single fix-all answer to this issue and has not had absolute success. The Association of Municipalities of Ontario represents all Ontario municipalities and recently completed through a third party a comprehensive study on homelessness in Ontario and what it would take to solve this crisis. On this slide are links to recent reports and studies completed by outside organizations that demonstrate the scope of this crisis and illustrate that this is not unique to Chatham-Kent. Next slide, please. Homelessness in Chatham-Kent is not new. The first housing and homelessness plan was approved by council back in 2013. At this time, the number of people experiencing homelessness was minimal, and the length of time people spent homeless was typically short. Staff in the field often reported that homelessness in CK was hidden, and it was. There were a number of residents precariously housed or who fell into an emergency, but back then we had options to help address it. As an example, in 2015, a monthly stay at a local motel would cost about $400 to $500 a month. Someone receiving social assistance, specifically Ontario Works, would be able to pay for their month's stay and still have a couple $100 left over for food and basic needs. The total monthly income for someone on Ontario Works back then was about $650. Fast forward 10 years to this year, 2025. The same motel is now charging $1,400 a month in rent, while the person receiving Ontario Works will only receive $733 a month. The average market rent at this time, back in 2015, was approximately $600, which meant that many people, even those receiving social assistance, could afford some level of housing with no additional intervention required by the municipality. The current average asking rent in Chatham for a one-bedroom apartment is well over $1,700 monthly. The asking rent is often a better barometer of the challenges faced by people experiencing homelessness because it shows what they will need to pay, whereas the average market rent also takes into consideration low rents that people are paying based on the luxury of rent control. This means that securing housing on your own is impossible for anyone who's receiving Ontario Works And for most that are receiving ODSP, that's Ontario Disability, as they only receive $1,368 a month. The math does not work, and it hasn't for many years now. Next slide, please. Before the pandemic, homelessness began to rise as the cost of living began to increase, while incomes for money remained frozen. The pandemic amplified this, and we saw property values skyrocket. Many boarding homes in Chatham-Kent were purchased with the tenants being evicted and the homes renovated into more expensive rentals. This is a difficult reality that was important to address. People suffering with addictions and undiagnosed mental health is not a new phenomenon in Chatham-Kent. The numbers very well may be higher, but the issue at its core is not. As we have heard directly from those with lived experience, what we now see in public was once behind closed doors. The difference is that those homes no longer exist for people as options. All this to say, every year, more people are falling into homelessness with less escaping. As demonstrated in this graph, the number of people experiencing homelessness in Chatham-Kent continues to increase every year. This is in line with nearly every municipality in Ontario. The few municipalities that are showing a decrease or a very limited increase have launched new supportive housing builds to help their numbers. Next slide, please. What happens every month is that some people who are experiencing homelessness get the help they need in secure housing of some form. They exit homelessness. This is our outflow. Unfortunately, new people every month fall into homelessness. This is due to a number of systemic issues, including reductions in affordable housing, and this is our inflow. More people each month fall into homelessness than those that exit. Some of council may recall a presentation back in 2022 where staff used the common river prevention metaphor to explain what was happening in Chatham-Kent with respect to homelessness. To quickly summarize, it is widely accepted that it is easier and more cost-effective to prevent homelessness. It was explained that the longer someone is experiencing homelessness, the harder it is to solve. Council is aware of success stories. Many of you have toured Victoria Park Place and other programs and have seen for yourself the hard work and dedication that staff, partners, and residents are putting into resolving their emergency. You have heard the deputations that supported this work at many other meetings from people who have received help and from community partners who have seen the results. But that doesn't mean that we have been successful in Chatham-Kent. Encampments are societal failures. Not one agency, not one level of government, nonprofit, or community group can solve this alone. Encampments involve people with very complex needs that our agencies have been unable to resolve. Some individuals in CK encampments have been there a short time, and they've advised that they're waiting for cabins and they are counting down the days hoping to get one. They may have a spouse or a partner, they may have a pet, and as a result, our congregate living style shelter was not accessible for them. But there are also individuals living in our current encampments that have been living outdoors for years. These are the ones who, as a community, we could not prevent this from happening. These are ones who we could not service in our shelters, who, as the analogy went, continued into the rapids where their mental health deteriorated further, their addictions progressed to where it is now. Municipal staff agree with our outreach partners and with our community partners that individuals need extensive treatment and rehabilitation services, services that do not exist in Chatham-Kent despite numerous attempts to bring them here. In 2022, staff reported that without immediate and significant increases in affordable housing and support services, more people would experience homelessness longer, that their needs would increase, which is exactly what we're seeing today. Next slide. As of today, there are about 10 known encampments in Chatham-Kent, with the largest, most visible encampment being at the PUC site. The others are smaller in nature, tend to be more transient, moving frequently depending on weather, neighbors, supports available, etc. There are also known encampments in Wallaceburg, and there have been known encampments in many of our other rural towns, which makes it reasonable to expect that there are also unknown encampments there right now that we don't know about. We understand that for many people who may not have experience on this issue, question if someone is that ill, why can't we force them to get help? Why can't we bring them to the hospital where they can remain until they are rehabilitated? Why individuals who may be intoxicated on substances cannot be arrested and remain there? I'd like to invite Chief Early up to talk just for a few seconds about the criminal code and the challenges that his officers have currently. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Mayor and Council. Before I start on this slide, when it talks about the police role in encampments, this speaks specifically to arrest and apprehension. I just want to advise that our role is multifaceted when it comes to this. Oh, sorry, Siri's talking to me. Although we're not the lead agency in this, we are a partner agency with Kim and her team, and we do like to take a collaborative approach to this. And yes, at times, there is law enforcement involved. Also with that is public safety, and the public safety is of everyone in Chatham-Kent, housed and unhoused. But when you speak about law enforcement, some of you at council have heard me say this, maybe some of the people that are here tonight, this is not something we are going to arrest our way out of. However, we are a partner in this. We are part of the team when it comes to this. I can tell you that since the encampment moved, we have had 143 calls for service to that location in and around it. 72 of those calls were reactive, which I would call, which is members of the community called, and the remainder were proactive by our officers. Our officers have had a heavy presence, at the encampment, plus a previous encampment. That goes to building that rapport, building those relationships. So when we do have to get to this portion, which is the law enforcement side, when we have to arrest or apprehend, I can tell you it's not easy, but it does make it easier because people understand. I will say that a number of the individuals living at the encampment, when they are spoken to by our officers and asked to do something or move or their tent isn't in compliance with the current protocol, they have listened, they have been compliant. There are a few outliers, there are some that do not, and then our officers will elevate their authorities when needed to. So when we speak about the authorities that you see right here, number one, the Criminal Code of Canada. Obviously, there's no law that prohibits you from sleeping in a public space. We cannot arrest an individual unless there's some sort of criminal offense occurring. Assaults, violent crimes, drug use, those types of things. Trespass to Property Act, a provincial act, the next two are. So the Trespass to Property Act typically applies to private property. It does apply to public. I do want to caution everyone before they start writing that down, but it has to be an unauthorized act that's going on. And with the current protocol that's in place, what's going on Grand Ave, Trespass to Property Act would not apply unless there's something else that occurs. And then our officers would use Trespass to Property Act. They may go to the Criminal Code of Canada. It all depends. And they may arrest or they may advise someone, move them along, which then takes care of it. And then when we talk about the next thing is the Ontario Mental Health Act. So our officers have the ability to apprehend individuals. Typically when they need evaluation because they're a danger to themselves or to others, that's another act that they could use involving individuals at the encampment. And I can tell you that has happened in the last week and a half. And then lastly, I don't want to get into this too much because I believe Dave's coming up next. Talks about the Charter of Rights and Freedom. I believe somebody gave a deputation on this under Section 7. Courts have ruled that removal from encampments without available housing can violate, right? So there are some circumstances. And the only thing that's not up there is a recent law that's just come into place, and it's called the Safer Municipalities Act. It's just been enacted on June 5th. What the province has done is they've given us a little bit more tools in the toolbox, so to speak, when it comes to open-air drug use. So in that situation, if somebody is using illegal drugs, officers or bylaw officers can approach them, ask them to stop, move them along. If they comply, then it's done. If they don't, then it's elevated to the next level, which could be a ticket. Unfortunately, I don't think giving tickets to individuals in an encampment is going to be a smart move. But there is an arrest authority in there, and officers could arrest if they do not comply. It's at very early stages. We haven't seen any short form wordings, which is what we would use to lay that ticket. So we are willing to use it. We do need to do some training on that for our members. But yes, it is another, so to speak, tool for us to use when it comes to the arrest and apprehension. But again, I just want to preface that, you know, we take an engagement first approach. I mean, we need to balance enforcement with human rights, especially when there's social realities that are being faced with some of our homeless people right now. So I don't know if we're doing questions now or after, Kim? After? Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor and Council, David Taylor, Director of Legal Services. Just as a bit of a supplement to the Chief's comments there, I wanted to make sure that the public in hearing this discussion was aware of the laws surrounding encampments and really some of the restrictions that municipalities face. Legal components of this are just one component, but it's important for citizens and council to understand in these discussions this constraints on approaches that municipalities can take because of a series of cases that have been decided in Ontario and across Canada. Because hopefully by understanding that, some of the approaches that municipalities are taking, including the encampment strategy and protocol that's in place here in Chatham-Kent, maybe will make a little bit more sense to citizens. Sometimes if you aren't paying attention, you aren't kind of up to date on these really quick evolutions of the law, the approach being taken might not appear on its face to be the best approach, but once you understand these restrictions, hopefully that helps. So there are several court cases that have established a right for unhoused persons to shelter on public land when shelter space is not available. And we know in Chatham-Kent, we do not have enough shelter space. So these cases really look at, there's two lines of cases. One of them, the earlier cases, are kind of a broader conclusion that people are allowed to shelter on public land. There is actually one case from Hamilton that was referenced tonight that was very explicit in saying that the right to shelter is only an overnight right. That's the only right that unhoused persons enjoy. But that's not the only case. There are competing cases, really. Other cases in other parts of Ontario and across the province have actually suggested that even a right to shelter may exist during the day as well. So I just wanted to be clear to people that there's this case in Hamilton that gets referenced. It's not the only case, that there's other cases as well, and that those are competing cases. A lot of people maybe who don't work in the legal world as well would think, well, the Hamilton case is the most recent case. As a result, that's the law. That's not the way the case law works in Ontario either, or in common law jurisdictions. We have multiple different decisions that are somewhat inconsistent with each other. They're all decided on their individual facts. And they only really apply to that fact scenario. And if another fact scenario comes up, you might end up with a different result. What we have now is multiple decisions at the Superior Court level, but those decisions haven't gone to the next level of an appeal court. In Ontario law, when you get appeal decisions, then you have a much stronger kind of understanding of what the law is. And so hopefully at some point, some legal case will get up to appeal level courts in Ontario about municipal encampment obligations, and that'll give us a much better direction. But as of right now, the municipality and council and administration are stuck with these competing cases and trying to apply these rules or these kind of obligations that we owe to unhoused persons to our encampment response. The core of all of these cases really gets to a question of whether or not the application of existing bylaws would breach the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is kind of the fundamental rights that each of us as Canadian citizens enjoys. And these cases do an analysis of under Section 7 of the Charter. That's the right to security of the person and life. And they actually conclude that just like in Chatham-Kent, there's bylaws that prohibit camping in parks. It's not that we don't have a bylaw that says you can't camp in a park, we do. The question in those cases is, can those municipalities, and by extension can Chatham-Kent, apply those no camping rules to somebody who's unhoused, who has nowhere else to go? And the courts say doing so would violate their Section 7 rights, their right to protection of their security of the person and their life. That's why we run into this problem, to where, while we have bylaws, we're then constrained by these cases that say applying those bylaws, trespassing people off of those properties, would violate the Charter, and as a result, you're not allowed to apply those bylaws. That's the crux of why we have an encampment protocol, rather than just telling people get off the parks like we could, or like you would think we could from the bylaw. And so it's really this kind of evolving social situation and this evolving case law that then ends up in a spot to where municipalities are trying to respond by having an encampment protocol that balances all of those, that respects those cases, respects that people who are unhoused have a right to shelter themselves on public lands, but then tries to apply some rules to constrain maybe the worst impacts that an encampment might have on neighboring areas. So that's why you'll see things like restrictions for how close it can be to recreational amenities or pathways, things like this. The caution, though, is we can't have so many rules that practically there is no public lands available to somebody to shelter on. That's the difficulty. That's the balancing and crafting any of these responses. Again, this isn't unique to Chatham-Kent. I can tell you we're connected in the municipal legal world to municipalities across Ontario discussing this exact same issue, having these exact same difficulties in trying to craft a response. So with that, happy to answer any questions later, but I'll turn it back to Kim.
In November of 2024, staff brought updated recommendations to council that considered legal advice and consideration for what other municipalities were doing. Staff were also conscientious about the limited resources that we have compared to our neighboring municipalities. Staff were intent on finding solutions that didn't cost taxpayers the millions of dollars that other municipalities were spending to manage the same issue. Additionally, as staff reported, encampments affect all of Chatham-Kent, and so extensive consultations were completed that included people with lived and living experience, Chatham-Kent residents, and business owners. The surveys were available on Let's Talk Chatham-Kent and were actively promoted, resulting in one of the most active municipal surveys completed, with 803 residents completing the survey online, 50 business owners, over 47 users accessed the page, 2,498 citizens reviewed the information, and in total, 836 residents completed the survey. Staff heard from members of the general public and individuals living in encampments that the larger concern surrounding encampments is not the homelessness itself, but the conditions, the crime, and the social disorder that continue to occur in some encampments. Additionally, and this continues to be the case with all forms of housing, whether it's affordable, supportive, or simply denser, many respondents agreed that we have a need for housing, but pointed that it should be in another neighborhood. It is because of this that staff did recommend protocols versus selecting one neighborhood over another. Next slide. As part of the recommendations brought forward to council, staff from multiple divisions reviewed and provided input on the feasibility of 3 options. Option 1 was sanctioned encampments. Sanctioned encampments generally involve municipalities setting aside and formally designated municipal land specifically for encampment use. There are several recognized models of sanctioned encampments, ranging from low service, low regulation sites with only basic essential services supplied, to more robustly regulated and staffed sites. While this approach has been considered in other municipalities, very few Canadian municipalities have proceeded to establish sanctioned encampment sites due to the costs, mixed support from stakeholders, and unclear outcomes regarding pathways to more permanent housing. Option 2 was a prohibition of all encampments. This option has been thoroughly considered by other Ontario municipalities. At the time of the protocols, case law was clear that this was a breach, but as legal has advised, there are new nuances, and we still don't have a clear definitive answer. We have to be realistic in that doing this would require enforcement of making people continually move, because as we have demonstrated, there is currently no available options for everybody. We can ban them from one area, but then we will spend resources chasing them out of other areas. Municipalities that have cleared some encampments have also been able to demonstrate increases in available housing options. For example, Hamilton has increased shelter capacity by 80%. Sarnia implemented a 38-bed overflow shelter. These additions cost millions of dollars to operate, and as we have not received this support from other levels of government to operate, we have not made these recommendations to council due to the impact it would have on property taxes. Option 3 was a strategy to mitigate the impacts of encampments through rules and protocols. This approach has been considered and adopted by several municipalities, including our own. We surveyed multiple of them, this appears to be viewed as consistent with current judicial guidance regarding encampments on municipal land, namely preserving municipal lands for encampments where there is lack of available and accessible housing solutions, while also working towards meeting the needs of the community at large, including neighbors and business owners. Where this approach has been adopted, there is recognition that removal of encampments can lead to harm to occupants, such that supportive and trauma-informed approaches to enforcement are necessary. There's also recognition that long-term housing solutions are required to properly address encampments and other forms of non-adequate housing. Until such time that Chatham-Kent has the necessary affordable and supportive housing that is needed, staff continue to recommend mitigation approaches to work to balance this impossible task. Next slide. At the November 2024 council meeting, Council, you voted unanimously to accept staff's recommendations after extensive conversation on this challenging topic. The protocols presented remain a balancing act. Administration has attempted to protect vulnerable community members like children and seniors, in addition to citizens' rights to access sports fields, parks, and other amenities, that all Chatham-Kent residents should be able to enjoy their property or business in peace. There was also and still is recognition that should we make the distances too great, then we would neither not be enforceable or we will create a liability for the municipality, both reputationally and financially. In November of 2024, when administration made the current recommendations, staff could only identify a few municipally owned properties that would meet these protocols. By further increasing the distance and thus reducing options, we fear that we are essentially banning encampments. Chatham-Kent does not have the number of wide open spaces like those in London or Sarnia, where they have implemented similar protocols with greater distances from residential property lines. Increasing the required distance from private property to 100 meters will reduce the number of available and known sites to 2 or 1. We'll have more comment on that later. This will create some new known and unknown challenges. Implementing daytime bans will require extensive enforcement and will have an impact on Chatham-Kent police, as they will be required to frequently keep the peace. Furthermore, it's been commented that Sarnia has solved their encampment issue. However, just last week, the Sarnia police launched an AI phone line so that people will stop calling the police about encampments. As stated by Sarnia Chief of Police in a CTV interview, since dismantling the encampment at Rainbow Park, those staying there have been dispersed to other encampments in the region. No community in Ontario has been able to solve this crisis, and until all levels of government begin working together to address the root causes, I'm afraid this will continue. There are no quick solutions, and right now we don't believe that there are any winners. Whether the encampment is near your home, near your business, or you find yourself on the opposite side of this conversation and needing help, this is truly an unacceptable reality in our community. Next slide. I'm going to ask Ray Harper to come up and talk about some of the current active projects we have as far as development in our housing portfolio.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ray Harper, Director of Municipal Housing and Property Development. Back in April, administration presented a report of the Comprehensive Housing Needs Assessment that was completed through Chatham for all the communities that make up Chatham-Kent. This provided what the current housing needs are now, as well as projected housing needs are for the communities. In addition, administration also presented some reports with the initiatives on our affordable housing developments, updates in those developments, as well as recommendations to move those projects forward. Before I go through these, brief summary, this year we completed a 23 unit in the community of Richtown, as well as a 17 unit in Blenheim, and both those projects are now occupied. The 50 unit emergency transitional cabin project is completed and just finishing touches up and will be ready for occupancy next month. 24 Redwood Crescent and 179 Eugenie Street here in Chatham. Those are family affordable housing developments comprised of 5 units and 6 units for 11 units in total. Construction has begun on both those projects with expected completion of an occupancy for fall of next year. The 101 McNaughton Avenue project, that is the modular project. That project had experienced some difficulties, but is currently under construction again with another contractor been awarded. That project will be completed next year and ready for occupancy. And that is 27 one-bedroom units for seniors. 199 West Court Boulevard, Wallaceburg project was brought to council last year. That's a 72-unit build proposed for Wallaceburg. The design process is near completion. Once that design process is completed, then it will be ready for tender for construction. So council will can expect to see a upcoming report to provide more details on that project. 110 Sandy Street, Chatham. That is currently the Meadow Park long-term care facility. That is, they're building a new site on the corner of Kyle Drive and McNaughton. That will be ready next year. Administration brought a report that would recommended that site be turned into supportive housing. So administration right now is working on an RFP for a full design for that site to be released to our bids and tenders website. Once that RFP is completed and posted, we'll get some design proposals that will be brought back to council for recommended to proceed. We don't get that site until around April of next year. So administration is trying to be proactive right now in getting those designs in place, ready for tenders for construction, so we don't end up sitting with a building there empty for a prolonged period of time. The Park Avenue East Chatham site. So that site was also brought forward to council through several reports in the past, as is a former public works property that was used for some of the transfers of materials. That site has some environmental issues that we're working through. So an ESA phase 1 has been completed, a phase 2 process is underway with some of those site soil conditions where we had to remove some of those soils as well as bring in clean fill. There's still additional testing that is working in order for us to make sure that site is clean and ready for redevelopment. So that is not a fast process and certainly subject to approvals through the MECP in order for us to obtain a record of site condition for redevelopment. That site, we had proposed both supportive housing as well as a mixture of affordable, deeply affordable and attainable units as 2 separate projects. And then 55 Croydon Street, Chatham, the former St. Agnes School property. We had purchased that property and recently completed the demolition of that of the old school on that property in order to enable that site for redevelopment for housing that would fit the needs of the community. Administration has done some preliminary work on some pre-designs and conceptual ideas, but the intention is for us to include that piece of property in an expression of interest to ensure that we explore all housing options for that parcel.
Since November, community partners and municipal staff have worked within the current protocols in an attempt to mitigate the valid concerns that the community has. At times, this has been successful. At other times, this has not. One of the challenges that municipal staff have is that at this time, these are protocols and not a bylaw, and therefore enforcement is a challenge. Additionally, Chatham-Kent does not have bylaw enforcement officers. Compliance to date has been a result of ROC's ability to gain buy-in from the individuals living in the encampments. ROC has attended this PUC site daily since individuals moved there. They have advised those who are in breach of the current protocols, mainly garbage and unreasonable amount of items, to comply, but they cannot force compliance. I do want to highlight some of the successes in our community. In January, the provincial government provided Chatham-Kent with emergency one-time housing benefits targeting people in encampments and in the shelter. As a result of that, 47 people were living in shelter or encampments were housed in about a 3-month time period. The federal government has approved a municipal grant request to fund ROC outreach and Hope Haven winter warming until 2026, thus reducing a potential increase to municipal taxes to continue these services. 277 Chatham-Kent households received supports to prevent homelessness in 2024. 277 households that we prevented from being at this encampment. Pathways to Cares was launched, and it's helped 22 high-needs individuals. That program is a joint partnership between the municipality's housing services, Medavie EMS community paramedics, and ROC's peer group. This program was developed under leadership and with assistance from the Ontario Health Team and is based on a gap that was recognized in services for individuals being discharged from hospital into homelessness. This program connects this team to the individual being discharged and helps them navigate supports and services once they're out of the hospital. Next slide, please. In further conversation with community partners and based on the experience responding to other encampments in Chatham-Kent, administration believes that, sure, we can do more to better manage the conditions of current encampments. When the original protocols were presented to council, it was done with the understanding that at the time we did not have bylaw officers to enforce the protocol. Staff working with ROC felt we'd be able to ensure compliance with the protocol by working with the folks in encampments in a cooperative and persuasive manner based on engagement. The criteria in the existing bylaw was developed recognizing that we do not have bylaw officers to enforce this protocol. We wanted to ensure that what was included in the protocol balanced the rights of both the homeless individuals and the neighboring businesses and homeowners. Our approach to ensuring compliance with the protocol has been successful to date, recognizing that at times it took a bit of time to make some changes. ROC and staff engaged with people, reminded them of their agreement, and were able to obtain voluntary action to comply with the protocol, thankfully. If changes to the existing protocol are made, bylaw officers will be needed to be hired to enforce the protocols and any other changes that council desires to make. Increased garbage removal and cleanup may occur at every municipally owned site. However, this service level will require additional funding and will vary based on the level of service provided. It's been staff's experience that people experiencing homelessness don't regularly have access to large pieces of furniture, yet there are multiple pieces in the encampment. So including that, we ask the community, please do not add to our challenge and provide supports thinking that furniture is a good idea. ROC and Housing Services, in partnership with Chatham-Kent Police, will continue to engage with people experiencing homelessness to make appropriate referrals, while also helping those that are able and willing to move into emergency and transitional housing. We are prepared to report back as soon as possible with whatever council decides, but we'll point out that will likely be hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to make changes that may be required. Next slide. I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'll open the floor for questions.
At this point, I'm going to open it up for council for questions, and if you can get your hands up, noting that we were at 8:08 already, and so if you could make sure your questions are succinct. But this is your only opportunity to ask questions of the administration. So I want to try and streamline this so that we get our discussion in tonight. Councillor Crew, followed by Councillor Harrigan.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you, Kim. That was a really good presentation, very thorough. So I have a couple questions. 80,000 people are experiencing homelessness.
In Ontario, yes.
Okay. And I'm probably going to jump all over here. So we talked about we need affordable housing and supportive housing. What would be the magic number to get us to where we need to be?
We currently know of 200, I believe our current count, 230 people experiencing homelessness. That's what we know about. So assuming there's also folks that we don't know about, these are the ones that have connected with some level of homeless type service so that we recognize who they are. So we would need at least 230 spaces.
Okay. Thanks. One of the, I'm gonna go, I got two people. Chief Early, I have a question for you. Can you speak to, one of the deputations spoke about that we have, talked about the staff versus the money that we have for policing. Could you talk about, do we have the staff to do what we need to do and what was suggested?
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Mr. Mayor. If Council recalls, in 2023, we did the operations review for the police service, and Council approved a significant increase to the Chatham-Kent Police Service, sworn and civilian. At that time, the data used was based on the calls for service and to get the Chatham-Kent Police Service up to the proper ratio for 2023. I can advise that we're in the midst of hiring all the officers right now. We only have about 6 left that get us to the quota that was authorized. Next year, we have some civilian spots to fill. In 2023, we did roughly 68,000 calls for service. In 2024, we did just shy of 72,000. And as of the end of June this year, we did 47,000 already. So we're on track to probably hit the 80,000 mark. If you'll recall as well, the increase was to deal with the zones we had, and that was even before we had a significant, I think we had an encampment concern, we just didn't know how bad it was at that time. So the short answer, no. Can we, as I said earlier when I spoke, that we are part of the team. Can we help short term? Absolutely. But this is not a long-term solution to have the police there. If you look around the communities in Chatham-Kent, it is not led by the police services, it's led by Kim, teams like Rock, and Bylaw. So the short answer is unfortunately no. We can short term, but long term it wouldn't be sustainable for us.
Thank you. And a lot of citizens and people spoke about, and even in the surveys that were done, people were more concerned about the crime, the vandalism, the social disorder. How is that managed, and how can you manage it from a policing? I'm thinking about neighbors calling when they see things happening. Do they call 911?
Yes, so to the young woman that spoke, I'm sorry that you went through that situation that you did. As you know, I think some of the councillors know, or some don't. We were inundated when the encampment first went to Grand Ave with 911 calls. I don't want to minimize anybody's feelings on what's going on at the encampment, but 911 is for true emergencies, not how far it is from your fence or because there's a blanket on your fence. And again, I don't take that as me minimizing what you're going through. So we had to put that out from immediate to the media because we have 911 calls we have to attend to. And I don't think anybody in this room wants us to not attend to a child not breathing or something like that when we have to. Unfortunately, the call that you did call in was an emergency. No, sorry. It was an emergency because it didn't deal with the protocol. The media release was specific to the protocol itself. Somebody laying on the ground anywhere in Chatham-Kent is a 911 call. So again, I apologize for any confusion that may have happened. To prevent crime, police, boots on the ground, we use evidence-based policing right now, and we've proven that the number of times a cruiser drives by a certain location, it minimizes the crime rate. As I said earlier, with the 134 calls that we've done in the last 2 weeks, 62 of those are proactive. So 62 times police officers are just attending to the encampment or around the encampment to do proactive stops, property searches, things like that. Have we missed some? Yeah, there's going to be some that happen, and we are dealing with a few cases right now, as we're talked about tonight, and there are some individuals that have been charged. We've had 9 arrests at the encampment, all for, one for mental health, and then the other 8 were for search warrant, or not search warrants, but warrants.
Thank you. That answers my questions.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by...
I'm not done.
Oh, sorry.
I have somebody else. Yeah. Darren, is this were you going to ask that? Okay, I'll leave that for you. You can just hang around. Kim, you alluded to the distance. We talked about the 100 meters, and I had sent in asking, what does this mean? 100 meters versus 75 meters versus 50 meters. What does that mean to an encampment in our community?
I'm going to defer to Bruce McAllister for
All right.
response.
Thanks, Bruce McAllister, General Manager of Development Services. Maybe I can keep this very simple. If you go more than 25 meters, you're essentially narrowing it down to a couple of options in Chatham.
Couple meaning 2. Okay. Can we?
Anything more than that, you're essentially don't have any room.
And can you tell us what those 2 options would be?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, it would be Thames Grove, which is obviously not very far away from where that is now. It'd be if you go to 100 meters, you could still accommodate on the very southeast corner of the property. A number of tents there. I would estimate 30 to 40 tents potentially. We'd have to obviously do.
In Thames Grove?
The other potential option is Paxton's Bush, but it's quite a ways out of, on the north end of town. That would probably meet the increased setback.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Harrigan, followed by Councillor Finn.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. The first question I have is around some of Kim's comments that were presented around bylaw enforcement. So if we shift to a bylaw, we perhaps could need bylaw enforcement officers. I'm not sure who on staff this question is directed to, so maybe the CAO can suggest, but when I think of bylaw enforcement officers, I think of like parking or building infractions, and the encampment setting is far more complex as a social situation. So how would we train bylaw enforcement officers to ensure that they are able to work confidently and safely in settings that there may be trauma or historical intergenerational poverty, violence, and other real complex social circumstances?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. I think you're absolutely right. Usually when bylaw enforcement officers are trained, the primary part of it is just sort of how to understand the legislation, how to write, how to write infractions, how to make sure that you have proper evidence so that when it goes to court, you'll be able to hopefully uphold the charge. I agree that this is a situation where we're dealing with complex individuals, and we want to make sure that they're safe. So I think this is not your typical bylaw officer where it's just somebody sort of writing tickets for parking. We would have to work with Kirk Early and his group and Jody's group as well, just to make sure that they get the proper training, that they understand the types of individuals they're dealing with. Because I think it is a complex group, and we want to make sure that people are treated fairly, but at the same time, we need to protect the staff that are doing the enforcement. So to be clear, I know one of the motions deals with that. This is not something where we can overnight just anoint people that currently work in a department and say, okay, you're going to be our bylaw enforcement officers. It's going to take some time to put us in a position where we have enforcement officers that can do the job properly and safely.
And just to follow up on that and to level set expectations of community members, when we say it's going to take some time, is that like 6 months or 9 months or 2 months? I just don't want people to think if we pass a bylaw tonight that includes something about bylaw enforcement, that in a couple of weeks they'll be looking for bylaw enforcement officers.
Yeah, the only reason why I'm smiling, I know this is a serious topic, but I predicted this morning that exact question would be asked. We don't know how long it'll take, but the good news is that we know, as you heard from the chief, we know that we can rely on some support from the chief in the interim. So we'll do it as quickly as we can if we get that direction. We'll make it a priority, but in the short term, Chief Early and his group will have to step in and help us. And in the long term, we will do what we can to get those bylaw enforcement officers up and trained. You asked if it's 6 months. I think 6 months is a reasonable time frame, but until we really understand what kind of training will have to be done, I can't commit to a time, but we'd endeavor to do it as quickly as we can.
Okay. Thank you. My next question through the mayor is, I believe, to Bruce. So Bruce, you mentioned that in Chatham, should we move to a 100-meter setback rule, that would result in 2 eligible encampment sites, one at Thames Grove and one in Paxton's Bush. What about other communities in Chatham-Kent? Because in the presentation that Kim had given, and with the growing numbers of houselessness, I think that Chatham and Wallaceburg are experiencing encampments today, but it should be no surprise to anybody around this horseshoe that perhaps some of our more rural communities could experience. And when I think of my hometown, I don't know if I can think of a public setting that would be 100 meters from a business or a residence.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Well, we haven't done a deep dive analysis on the other communities. I've just done a cursory review, and I would suggest 100 meters pretty much eliminates most options without saying that 100% confidently without looking at it more closely, but there wouldn't be many. I think people keep in mind most of our existing parks were built in existing neighborhoods, right? So they're around residential uses. And, the majority of the larger parks would be here in Chatham versus other communities as well, right? So,
Right.
If I can just add something to that. So I do think that it differs by the community. I know some people are familiar with the encampment rules in Sarnia, for instance. So Sarnia talks about 1,000 meters from closest residential. Sarnia has the ability to do that because their community is about 5 times the size of Chatham proper. And so as a city, they have much more space. And if you've been there, obviously you know that the vast majority of residents are on the west end. The east end, because of the uses, are really, there's not much residents there at all. So you can't just look at the numbers and say, why can't we do this or that? Every community is different. So I think it's a good question. And I agree with the response, but I think it differs if you're talking about Wheatley or if you're talking about Chatham, just like it differs whether you're talking about London or you're talking about Sarnia.
Thank you. The next set of questions I have are just very quick, Mayor Caniff, based on some of the questions and comments I had heard in deputations. I think, Kim, you can probably answer the first one. Can you tell us about safe and clean drinking water supply at the current encampment? How do people who are currently residing at the encampment site have access to safe drinking water?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to you, Councillor Harrigan. Folks at the current encampment rely on outreach support and services and community partners to provide clean and safe drinking water.
And then the next question, I know our police log service calls really diligently and categorize them. We see them at BIA meetings often. But I was under the impression we did the same for 311 calls. How might 311 calls, when people are asking for information about the encampments, be categorized? Would it be like housing or social services, just depending on how our CR, our customer relationship managers, and maybe Jody can help with that, or Bruce?
Yeah, who can, maybe Bruce?
Yes, so all 311 calls are logged. The question was whether or not an actual ticket is created to have some action on it, right? So, you know, certainly through 311, we'd have a record of the calls. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just really appreciated the deputation comment about gathering data to understand that. So I think we could maybe learn from our colleagues at CKPS for that. So those are all my questions for now, Mayor Caniff. Thank you.
Councillor Finn, followed by Councillor Scotchy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Harrigan touched on it. Just inquiring, how many bylaw officers do we presently have that are classified just as bylaw officers?
Well, we have bylaw enforcement officers in various departments, right? If we look at building, it's a combined job. Like they do roles as building inspectors and bylaw enforcement. So I would suggest we've got, right off the top of my head, about 10 individuals now. But obviously, only about 10% of their time is allocated towards bylaw enforcement. So you're probably talking about the equivalent of 1 or 2 bylaw enforcement officers full-time from building services. Now, Kim's group has, they're doing the enforcement. We're not doing any of the enforcement out of building development services and the encampment protocols. It's really been handled by Rockman in Kim's group.
Thank you. I can speak to the enforcement that has taken place. We, as I mentioned in my presentation, we have not relied on bylaw officers to complete that. We have worked with ROC to speak with the residents at the encampment, explain the issue, and give them time to correct their actions. And as I said in my presentation, thankfully, eventually, all folks were willing to comply with those. Should they have not been willing to comply, we would have looked to Chief Early's team for assistance in encouraging folks to do that.
Okay, second part of that question is, are there any other departments that have employees that are capable of enforcing bylaws? That if they're sent to that encampment, that could, not just the police, which are obvious.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor, for the question. Dave Taylor, Director of Legal Services. So there's a few different divisions that a staff member is also assigned as a bylaw enforcement officer. So those persons, from a purely technical perspective, would have the ability to write a ticket. But as the discussion happened earlier between Michael and Councillor Harrigan, I believe it was, it's a matter of training on this bylaw, training on how to deal with these social issues, which is a very different kind of skill set. So I don't want to make it appear as if we just have all these people, but for a bunch of different departments actually do have staff members who are bylaw enforcement. So in the animal control area, there's a few people in a contracted service that do bylaw enforcement, but of course we need them to be taking care of animal control. We have a few people that do parking. It's a very small group of people that do parking. They're focused on parking. Our public works department supervisors are technically bylaw enforcement officers, but they have to be running roads crews, and they only are doing bylaw tickets for a few very specific reasons. And then, as Bruce mentioned, there's also building inspectors who are bylaw officers on the side. So we have staff that have the ability because they've been appointed as a bylaw officer, but they don't have the time because they have other jobs. And they also would need significant training in order to try to do enforcement in this difficult social issue.
Have you thought about how many you would require?
Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We've talked a little bit about how many we may require to enforce a bylaw. The challenge that we have right now is we don't know what the bylaw might potentially look like. And so until we actually have those details to understand what kinds of enforcements might be required, we're not able to estimate the numbers at this time.
Okay. Last question. Bruce, you said anything over 25 meters, which is probably, what, 75 feet? How many, if it was 25 meters, would that open up to?
Thank you, Your Worship. Probably just the one where it is now.
Thank you.
But perhaps we can just be clear with that. That's taking into consideration the other elements in the protocol. The point being, yes, there are parks that are larger, but those parks are eliminated. We don't even do the calculation of the distance because they're eliminated either because there's a splash pad or something like that, or they're next to a nursery or what the other criteria in the protocol. I just want that to be clear because I don't want people to think, well, surely there's other parks around and so they must be able to go somewhere else. We're just looking at the ones that would meet all of the elements of the protocol, including the 25 meter, or whatever the question was, 25, 50, whatever the distance is.
Thank you, Your Worship. Maybe for greater clarity, Kim mentioned it earlier, even the existing protocol is pretty prohibitive as we speak now, right? There's only a handful of properties, Kim, that would potentially be eligible based on what Michael just suggested when you eliminate all the other factors in our municipal parks. So I just want that to be clear as well. We don't have a lot of options right now the way it sits today. Mm-hmm.
Councillor Sakatchi, followed by Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff, and through you to Ms. Crew. So first, obviously, I appreciate all the hard work that your team does. I know sometimes it's a thankless job, but I do have to ask some tough questions sometimes. And I guess one thing, most of my questions have been already asked by Councillor Harrigan, but when you're indicating that they're majority willing to comply, I guess that what I'm hearing from a lot of the public is what happened then on Thames Street in regards to compliance, in regards to how far gone that site went. If we're talking about willing to comply, how did that site comply with 20 to 30 truckloads of debris being trucked out of there? And I understand that we lacked providing you with enforcement, but what went so wrong there in regards to, I guess, the condition of that site?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Sakatchi. Honestly, simply that, lack of resources. We have no enforcement, so we relied heavily on rock. We went down to the encampment on 2 different occasions with notices to the residents there of violations of the protocol. One being they were too close to the property that is next to the encampment. We provided notice, we went down. Folks, within a couple of days, were willing to move their tents the required 10 meters away from that property line. As far as garbage, we hired a contractor to come weekly to collect garbage. Rock went weekly to assist folks in collecting garbage. Quite honestly, having everyone in such a confined space increased the amount of collectible items that were impossible to get rid of because everything was so condensed in one small area, and inside of it turned into complications to get in as far as garbage removal. So where did the protocol go wrong? I don't think it went wrong. I think it was lack of enforcement that we had and lack of resources to pay to have folks clean it up.
Well, thank you. And just my last question, I'm going to ask it to the CAO because I don't want to put staff into a challenging conversation, but we already know that there's a mounting pressure on all levels of government to find solutions to encampments, especially the ones that residents and businesses, are concerned about, which rightfully so they should be. Since long-term solutions are required, Mr. Dubin, have you seen that council has been extremely supportive, and all council has been very supportive of purchasing housing, transitional housing, supporting housing? Because I know that this is something that comes up very regularly, and when we start to look at these types of solutions, we offer here significant opposition in the media by not just residents, but also our other councillors. And I'm just kind of see as a council, what can we do differently to try to support that initiative to be all hands on deck, all in on trying to find solutions, which is critical to the encampments in regards to finding additional and different housing to fit our inventory.
Well, okay. Well, I guess if the question is whether or not council has been unanimous on opportunities to buy property to support support housing across the spectrum, the answer is no. We haven't seen, unanimous votes necessarily, but we have seen general council support. And I think Mr. Harper was up there earlier identifying a number of properties that we do own. It'd be nice if we owned a few others, but we do own a number of properties, and we have opportunities to develop some additional housing. We're going to need money from upper levels of government. So no, it hasn't been unanimous, but I can't sit here and explain why. I'm sure there are reasons why individual councillors maybe didn't support a different thing. But I will say, at the end of the day, it just has to be a majority vote. And as long as the majority of council supports, the ideas that are brought forward to try to create housing, that I hopefully will move the needle forward. I will say where I've seen some unanimity, if that's a word, is on the issue of asking upper levels of government to support us. And if I can, Mr. Mayor, I think there was at least one delegate that talked about, fight for this community. We all are. Councillors are, individual members of staff are. We attend any opportunity we can with upper levels of government and ask for support, but everybody's asking for support. And I've probably used this analogy, publicly before, but just think of Chatham-Kent as just another baby bird in a mouthful of 400 baby birds. A bit more than 400. And one of them, by the way, is Toronto, which has a bigger mouth than all of us, asking for money, asking for support. This isn't an issue that is only troubling Chatham-Kent. Thankfully, we don't see the levels of homeless that other communities do. But we are asking, we are fighting, both at the staff level and at the council level. No matter what the outcome of today is, I want the public to know that. People are doing whatever they can to try to get support for our community. So Councillor Socacci, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. I wasn't necessarily looking for unanimous. I think that's everyone has a different perspective, which is completely understandable. I guess what we could just do better to support our community when it comes to transitional and supportive and affordable housing, because often it's very challenging sometimes for us to support that because of some of the pushback within the community. And just my last question, I guess, to Jody, and I think that it's important because there's a lot of eyes on this right now. One of the deputations spoke to, and it's a conversation we've had significantly amount of times in regards to why other communities that are maybe in even a little bit less challenging situation from their demographics than we are receiving significantly more fundings. Has there ever been like any type of logistical reasoning why? Has there been any reasons to say like this is what we're not doing, or we're meeting a threshold? Like just because if there is an answer, I think it's important as a whole and as a community, we know what we can do differently to get more supportive funds, because quite frankly, when you look at what we got I guess more last year, it was quite frankly, I guess I better speak politely here, but I was very disappointed, I'll say that.
Thank you, Councillor, for your question through Mr. Mayor. I think that's the million-dollar question, no pun intended. Really, we haven't been able to really get a handle as to why we have not received some of the funding opportunities that other municipalities who are comparable in size, sometimes smaller in size than us, and they're receiving more dollars than us. As Mr. Dubin has stated, we all have connections at a variety of different levels. We have the ear of different individuals to ensure that the needs of Chatham-Kent are brought forward and understood by those that need to be making those decisions. I know councillors sitting around the horseshoe have different connections as well and have raised this forward to different connections and individuals that they are aware of as well, and we don't seem to get a good answer for that. I know I haven't answered your question, but that is the million-dollar question and that we are really trying hard to get down to the bottom of. Thank you.
Thank you. My questions are done. Mayor, can I have just one comment? Maybe obviously we're going to be talking about this again. Maybe the next time we can have an open invitation to our MPPs to come in and see the challenges that our communities are facing.
Councillor C. McGregor, followed by Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. Thank you to some of my fellow councillors for some of the questions that have come up. I think many of us have maybe stroked some off our list, so thank you in that. One particular one that I would like to ask, and it's not administration on this report, but it is administration, so I'm assuming this will be the time. But I'm wondering if possibly Darren Galbraith from the PUC could possibly come up. And there was mention in a delegation that our water source or the water source through the PUC at the treatment plant there could be in danger. And I'm just wondering if you could give us a little comfort in knowing that maybe our water source is not in danger of being contaminated, regardless of the situation of the encampment. And then I'll have another question after that. Thanks.
Good evening, Darren Galbraith, General Manager, Chatham-Kent Public Utilities Commission. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I can assure you that we have the appropriate safety measures in place at the Chatham Water Treatment Plant to prevent contamination. In this case, we were talking about the encampment. We do perform risk assessments on a regular basis to ensure and mitigate the risks involved with terrorist acts and theft in our facility. That's the water treatment plants, the sewage treatment plants, the sewage pumping stations, and elevated water tanks. We have elevated our security measures already, so we're on the alert. For example, one of the simple things that I can share, I can't really be privy to sharing what all safety measures we have in place, but is daily fence checks, where staff walks the fence, looks for breaches in the fence, and we're just keeping a close eye on it. But yeah, I can assure that right now we're in a good place for security measures.
Thank you. And if you can share this, have there been any breaches or any dangers faced with the property or the fence?
Not as yet. Where we do, it's not uncommon for us do have breaches in the security fence, especially when we have new construction trailers come on site, that they're usually deemed as a good target. But we've learned over the years how we teach the construction companies and to protect their assets. So thus far, no issues whatsoever.
Okay, and it wasn't in one of the delegations, but I did see on social media that there was issues going on with the community garden. Are you familiar with any issues that are going on with the community garden due to the encampment?
No, we kind of been watching and listening. We haven't heard too much. Our one thing was about the water supply there and making sure that structure that's there for community gardens is locked at all times. But I do understand how there's concern with community garden being right there, but we've not heard anything directly.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I can't imagine being in a situation that, of living in a situation such as what some of our members have found themselves in, and, not having access to food and having a community garden there, or being challenged about accessing food that is there. So appreciate your answering questions tonight. Thank you.
Councillor McDonald, followed by Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mayor Kenan, and thank you, Kim, for the presentation. I understand the need to find a balanced solution, but I just want us to be aware of any of the impacts that any of our decisions will make. So my question is, how is one's mental health affected when they're asked to leave an encampment, and what resources are available to them if they're asked to relocate again?
Thank you for your question through you, Mr. Mayor. Individuals' mental health is significantly and negatively impacted when they are asked or forced to relocate from an encampment. As mentioned in various deputations and presentations tonight, people have a sense of community, often in encampment, and there is safety in numbers. The other thing is that folks that are required to relocate often are worried about where they will land next, and so the stress, anxiety, and fear of that is huge. The other thing is they will lose their possessions. So many of these folks don't have means of transportation, so relocating them from one area to a next often means they are starting over, which often means that they are leaving behind all of the donations and things they've received in the past. Hence the reason why there was such a big cleanup at the Thames Street encampment, because when folks are forced to leave, they take what they can carry and then they move on. And then we are left to clean up the mess for that. So there's a significant impact, yes, to their mental health. As far as resources in order to help them relocate, when we asked folks to vacate the Thames Street encampment, we asked Rock Missions to help us move the folks. So when we went to the encampment, we had various housing staff as well as Rock and their team. If folks had a location that they wanted to go, and if it fell within the protocol, then Rock's team and our housing team would provide them transportation. We did that because of the required construction work that has to happen at the Thames Street encampment, but that is not actually part of the contract that we have with Rock. They did that for the benefit of the folks. That is not part of the regular outreach duties.
Okay, thank you. I have some comments on that, but I'll save them for later. Thank you.
Councillor Doyle. Followed by
Through
Councillor
you.
Story.
Through you, Mayor. Kim, I'm just going to ask this because this came up in a couple of deputations. We see this online a lot and in just talking to people in person. Would we have any idea of what percentage or how many of the people in the encampments are not from Chatham? Or are not local to Chatham?
Thank you for your question through you, Mr. Mayor. I can't give you an exact percentage, but what I can tell you is individuals, when they are experiencing homelessness, in order to get connected to services, they call our homeless response line. If they are not from our community, which means we do a very thorough diversion process to find out if they have family connections, medical connections, social connections, do they have supports here, are they going to be successful in solving their homelessness? It is best practice, and it is researched found that individuals with no supports are not likely to be successful in that community in solving their homelessness. And so if someone is not from our community, we make every effort to transport them back to where they will have success in ending their homelessness. So we do know that there is no one in our current shelter system that is from out of town, but when we say no to services, we will offer to transport you back. People have the right to say no, thank you. And so could there be folks in the encampment that are not from Chatham-Kent? There could be. But I will also say that our outreach partners are very familiar with folks that are in the encampment, and they refer to us if folks are not from around here so that, again, we can attempt to reconnect them with where they should be in order to be successful. So I don't have a percentage up for you, but I would say that majority are from Chatham-Kent, born and raised.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I heard when we talked before, it was about they couldn't use our services if they weren't from Chatham. And in one of the meetings before, it was brought up that that could be why they are in encampments. So I just didn't know if we had an idea.
That has not been our experience, that it is people from out of town that are in our encampments. There may be one or two, but like I said, we can't force them to leave our community.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Story.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Thank you to everyone on administration, Kim, Chief Riley, Dave, Ray, and all of their teams who worked on that presentation for us tonight. There was a lot of really useful information, so thank you for all of that. This is a difficult conversation, and most of my questions have been asked and answered, which is great. But I do feel like in order to make a reasonable decision tonight or moving forward, you have to understand how we got to where we are tonight. And I feel that it appears that decisions had been made without communication to residents, as we heard in the neighborhood, to folks in the encampment with lived experience, and to council about why this was happening, when it was happening. And as councilors, and I only speak for myself here, but my position is that we were forced to try and explain and defend a decision that we really had no part in. And it's not to excuse it, but it is still a bit confusing to me as why we're even sitting here tonight, because of that decision that was made without communication to the rest of us that all had a role to play in that decision. So I appreciate, it was very frustrating to a lot of the folks who were reaching out to me. And I was frustrated that I couldn't give you better answers at that time. So I appreciate this meeting was held so we could get more of that information into the community. So thank you, Mayor Caniff, for calling this meeting to get that information out. So to, I suppose, Mr. Dubin, why did this decision happen when it did without council communication? Thank you.
So I think, are you talking about the decision in terms of closing the downtown site, or are you talking about the homeless community choosing this particular site? Like which of the two decisions? Because I think one probably led to the other.
If you wouldn't mind explaining both, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll ask Mr. Soldo to talk about the first part. As I know, an email was just sent recently, so he has all that information. But to speak to the first part in terms of how long we've been discussing the work on the slope by the river. And then maybe Ms. Crew can talk about the process. And I think she did mention a little bit already, but maybe you can give a bit more detail about how we got to the point of sharing the encampment protocol with Rock Missions and what happened after that. So if I can go to, through you, Your Worship, if I can go to Edward Soldo first, and maybe you can talk about that part of it, and then we'll deal with the second part of the process.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Edward Soldo, General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering Services. Regarding the project that's being undertaken along the Thames Street, that is a project that was identified back in 2019 for undertaking some slope stability work along that section there. And really the issue is that it's an unstable slope, and the work there is going to be done to increase the flood protection for downtown. So what we don't want to see is that slope give way and then potentially have some flooding in and downtown, given the chances of flooding that we see in the spring as we did this year. That work's been underway since 2023. We did have public consultation on that project back in 2023. It was identified through the 2024 capital budget, and the council approved at that time. We had anticipated that construction would actually take place in 2024. As council aware, at that time there was no encampment at that location. That work was pushed back to get some permits to this year. And then earlier this year, we got the final clearance for that project to proceed. The project has been tendered. It closed a couple weeks ago, and we'll be coming back to council shortly for council approval of the tender in the August meeting. That's really what precipitated the requirement for the location, the encampment location to move.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. When we heard from the engineering team that this work was required to happen and was actually should have happened sooner, that there was a timeline, they needed to get back to council and get the tendering award done, we were asked to move quickly. And so what that means is we issued a letter, which was a notice to vacate to residents at the encampment on July the 2nd. We gave them 10 days to think about a new place of where they would go. In that letter, it did contain the encampment protocol so that they could use it as guidelines when thinking about a next location. We shared the encampment guidelines with Rock, who had previously known them already, and we went through an exercise where Rock identified various locations within Chatham-Kent, and basically we said, no, that won't work. No, that one won't work, and left them with various options of locations that would not violate the protocol. Rock then went and had conversations with the folks down at the encampment and said, you have to leave. We are willing to help you. You need to make a decision about where to go. We will help you and support you if you're moving to a location that's within this protocol. And so folks chose the PUC site, and we assisted in the transportation of that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Edward. And I don't think anyone who's seen the Thames River flooding over the last many years would probably disagree with the need to replace that. I think there was just the process seemed to miss a few steps, and as a result, a lot of this concern was created in the community. So I think just to how we can avoid that in the future, because it appears that there will be some discussion tonight about where this may move next, perhaps, I don't know. But how will we ensure that that communication will be in place ahead of time versus retroactively? Because I do feel, there will obviously be, and hearing those two locations tonight, those two new locations already, to me, again, my own opinion, feel a little problematic. But again, those with proper communication and inclusion of council and residents and those with lived experience, perhaps that might go a little more smoothly. So could you give us maybe a little more input on if this encampment moves elsewhere, what can we do a little differently that might make that transition go a little more smoothly? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I will begin the response, but then I will defer to Jody for follow-up. We serve at the direction of council. So if council makes a decision on a new location tonight or a change in protocol parameters, then we would take guidance from council on how they want that communicated to the public. And I will defer to Jody if she has anything she wants to add.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think that we would need to take a look at what are the changes and what are the impacts, and we need to do a little bit of an assessment to really determine where will individuals go and what information is needed. And we'd work with the communications team to look at what opportunities would we have to provide input, to provide information to folks so that they could provide, I won't use the word input because we will make decisions based on what council tells us to do. We are trying really hard to follow the direction that's provided to us. So we will be providing as much information to residents so that they can mitigate any concerns that they might have.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. I think where I still struggle is that council did not give you direction to move that from 10th Street. So again, I'm not trying to, I really, this is a very challenging conversation, and it's, everything about this is challenging, and I really don't want to put anyone on the spot, and that's not my intent, but this is a really difficult situation, and I appreciate that council should be giving you direction, and I hope we can, in a reasonable and fair way to everyone affected. I don't want to belabor it, but I think there was a gap there, and ideally we can address that moving forward. And so I just have one final question about the bylaw enforcement piece. You've shared a lot tonight about the important role that Rock Missions is playing in all of this, and I am personally very grateful for the role they are playing. You've also indicated how when they work in tangent with the folks in the encampment that they are abiding by those protocols. It might take a couple of days, but it does appear, based on what you've said, that they are effectively working with them. So is there a reason why we would change that approach and hire bylaw enforcement officers that may not be trained or may take a while to be trained? Why couldn't we build on the relationship with Rock and those existing relationships that they have with the stayers and maybe provide them with the needed resources to continue and build on those relationships? It sounds like the enforcement piece, if that's the right word, is already working well with Rock in that role, and maybe we don't necessarily need to be hiring more staff to play that role instead. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Outreach partners, in all of the research that I've done and that I've read across the country, quite honestly, outreach is impossible to be enforcement because they are the key to building relationships with people. And so similarly, when Chief Early's team shows up, they are not often welcomed. They are not, brought in with open arms, whereas Rock is. And that's because they've worked hard to build relationships, and to jeopardize that in an enforcement role would be ineffective. We would lose the relationships that they have already built. We would lose the buy-in that we have already developed with the folks that are at the encampment. And I would fear that we would have far less, if any, compliance if we tried to ask Rock to do enforcement instead of engagement.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just one quick follow-up. Enforcement wasn't the right word. It seems like the model that is in place now seems to be working. Is it? So I guess I'm not entirely clear on why, if the model of coordination or collaboration is working, do we need to move to an enforcement model if the model with Rock is an effective one?
I see Jody has her hand up.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think the challenge that we have is when we developed the encampment protocol, we tried to put in place parameters that were, I guess I'll say, somewhat reasonable, in which we could work with individuals and and help them comply with the rules that we had set in place for them. If we are in a situation where we can't maybe garner that willingness to comply with the protocol and the parameters that are identified within the protocol based on changes perhaps that may come from tonight, we probably won't have the expertise. We probably won't be able to do that kind of encouragement and the voluntary compliance with the new parameters. So I think that's what the difference is.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kim.
Councillor Juvenville, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. I just have a couple quick questions. Mr. Taylor, and excuse me if I missed this, you were referencing the cases. Did you say any of them are at the appeal stage? And if they are, do we know how far advanced they are at the appeal stage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did see reference that the decision in Hamilton, which is the most recent decision, there was commentary that the local legal clinic was intending to appeal that decision. However, we don't have any kind of recent updates on it. These matters do take a long time. So no, it's not as if there's one that we're aware of that's kind of for an imminent argument at an appeal level that will give us direction soon.
Okay, thank you. Now, we've heard the figure of 100 meters thrown out, and then we've heard 25 meters. If some of this restriction of 15 to 20 meters came to be, would that, as far as being away from a residential area, would that provide a few more options? Or is it basically the 10 meters that it is now or nothing?
I have to look at that in further detail, but I would suggest it probably isn't going to open up any more options. As I mentioned earlier, they're pretty limited now at 10 meters, so.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a bylaw, but I think I might ask it during the motion. Do we know how much money has been spent or earmarked towards everything involved with maybe policing and maintenance and whatnot at the encampment on Thames Street and thus far at the encampment on Grand Ave? Is this something that we're tracking, or is this a report that we could get back to council at some point?
Just while Chief Early is moving up to the mic, through you, Mr. Mayor, I can say that from a housing services perspective, we do track costs. So that is something that we can easily get and report on. And I'll turn it over to the Chief.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. It's a long walk to say yes, but I'd have to get that for you. But yeah, we do track all the hours spent, hence the officers create their calls for service, and we have hashtags we use to track all of the data. But yes, we can get that.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, just in the future, if we could get a report just so that we know, that would be great. Thank you. That's all. Thank you, Mayor Caniff.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I think this question is probably for Kim. Thank you so much for all of your work on this, and I definitely appreciated everyone that came to delegations and then also the presentation that you and your team gave. Would you be able to share with us what other locations were identified as possible options?
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. I might lean to Ray Harper to help me with this. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Do you know them, Ray? Sorry, I'm going to maybe ask Ray to join me.
So I'll maybe just jump in again. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So two of the other locations that were identified by ROG was Thames Grove, and there's a green space near the courthouse. That was another space as well that was identified.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Would that then not, so that would still qualify under the current protocol, but then would not if we were to change it?
That's right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Thames Grove would. Thames Grove was one of the ones that was on the list, I think.
Thank you, Your Worship, at the question. So you could, the encampment could be accommodated on Thames Grove in the very southeast corner, even with a 100-meter setback from residential properties and business properties.
Sorry, and just to further clarify, that would be the only option. So then are we, maybe this is a question for Mr. Taylor, is this then violating their right to choose where they can live?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's tough. I would tell you, Council, I believe that that's getting very restrictive, and that could be an issue in terms of establishing rules that are that restrictive to an area. The reason that those restrictions, there's a couple of reasons why we wouldn't recommend going to that far of a restriction, but one of them is that there's a possibility that persons actually can't be in the same encampment. So sometimes there will be criminal proceedings in which people aren't allowed to be within a certain distance of each other. Okay, so now if you only have one location that people can go to, that's a problem, right? What if there was a domestic violence issue between two unhoused persons or some other issue like that? Okay, so now you run into a different problem, right? So these are the layers, the kind of complexities that are associated with these difficult social issues that need to be considered when we're crafting rules like this. You have to think about how do they apply to those individuals as well, right? And so that's the difficulty of making a decision like that, where we're giving kind of general information about distances, and you aren't necessarily then able to calculate the way that would be implemented in the real world. And so that's why we would not be recommending against getting so narrow of coming down to essentially a single location.
Thank you so much, and I certainly appreciate you explaining that. I have another question that is likely for you, through you, Mr. Mayor, for you, Mr. Taylor. Is there any language within the charter that protects the residents that live around these areas that then could be utilized as well to say, you know, whether it's small children or around a school? Is there something that protects people from being exposed to things like this, or not?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the charter applies to all Canadians. We enjoy it constantly. Many of the foundational rights we have are because of charter protections. We haven't seen a case in which somebody suggests that there has been a charter violation because of the fact that they had an encampment on public lands near them. And obviously there has been complaints from citizens groups raised in these court hearings. So I can't give you a definitive answer on that, but that hasn't been something that has been a kind of key analysis in any of these decisions that have considered this same kind of area of law, both in Ontario in a number of cases and across Canada.
Thank you so much. And one more final question that I'm hoping somebody has an answer to. Has there ever been a situation where an encampment has settled on provincial or federal land, and do they have policy, and what do they do if that happens in their area? Have we heard of this anywhere across Canada?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just conferring with my colleagues here, we haven't heard of that situation just from, you know, the anecdotal evidence of sharing between municipalities. I would say that the analysis that applies to a case in which public lands owned by municipalities are available for shelter would seem to also potentially apply to federal or provincial lands, but it's not something that we've heard of as much. Of course, municipalities tend to be the owners of lands that might be most likely used for unhoused persons, like recreational amenities and woodlots and these types of things.
Thank you so much. I think that's all of my questions. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, then I will call Councillor Harrigan to take the chair.
All right, thank you very much, Council, for all of your questions and for staff for your responses. At this time, we will be taking any motions that we have on the floor, and I will turn it over to Mayor Caniff to present his motion that he has prepared.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got a motion. I'm going to skip the whereases and just get down to the 9 points. And I have made prior to tonight, I had made a few minor adjustments, and I'll just highlight those as I go through them. So item 1, the current encampment protocols be amended to require encampments be 100 meters away from any private property line with a habitable residence. And I want to add a 1B saying, just repeating that for say 100 meters from any business as well. Number 2, administration continues to work in collaboration with ROC to engage with individuals and prioritize them for services and housing as they become available. Item 3, administration voluntarily transition as many homeless individuals as possible to the new transitional cabin program, thereby diminishing the number of people in encampments. Number 4, administration actively pursues all options to reduce and end encampments in Chatham-Kent. This will include, but not be limited to, exploring opportunities to immediately deliver permanent supporting housing. And I've deleted in there increased shelter spaces. So I've deleted those 3 words from the previous motion. And increased transitional cabins. A report back from administration on possible options and costs to be returned to council as soon as possible. The same recommendations should be presented to the provincial and federal government for financial assistance. Item 5, administration explore local housing options that could be quickly converted into supportive housing and report back on feasibility and costs. The current encampment protocols be amended to include a provision that there is to be no more than 1 tent per person, and that all personal items be stored within a tent, with an exception of a bicycle, and items in contravention that will be removed following notice. Administration be directed to enhance the frequency of refuse collection at encampment sites. Number 7, administration bring back a bylaw as soon as possible to allow for the enforcement and the approved protocols to begin. Item 8, administration hire additional temporary bylaw. I'll put in officer and sirs, depending on the report, to enforce these amendments. Administration be to report back recommendations on numbers and costs based on the approved protocol amendments. And the last one, CK Police installs CCTV cameras where operation required at the sole discretion of the Chatham-Kent Police. That's my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Caniff. Councillor Crew, will you second the motion?
Yes, I will, and I have a friendly amendment.
Go ahead.
I think it'd be a number 10, that administration bring a report back to the September 8, 2025 council meeting, a plan to engage partners from mental health, medical supports, addictions, housing, and ROC mission that could provide provide supports, including crisis support worker, alongside enforcements to the people staying at encampments. This report should include creative solutions and best practice examples used across the province, and will also include related costs to CK.
Thank you, Councillor Crew. Mayor Caniff, is that a friendly amendment? Thank you, so we can see the addition on there. All right, Council, because this motion was shared with Council and I believe on Mayor Caniff's social media page to a large extent ahead of Council, that being said, we did waive notice so that we can vote and pass on it this evening. However, some council members may have suggested edits to the motion, and so if that were to take place, then we would need to vote on those separately before confirming the full motion. So I will ask, just for efficiency's sake, that if you are a councillor that does have a recommended amendment, to please put your hand up a little bit early so that we don't have multiple iterations. So I see Councillor Finn, Councillor Doyle, Councillor Story, and Councillor Jubenville. I'll note other hands as they come up. Councillor Finn.
Just a quick friendly amendment to number 6. I know quite a few of them have animals that may require a structure like a doghouse. I know one has a catio outside for the 2 cats that they own. If we could make a friendly amendment just to allow them.
So you're asking number 6 to include the language to include structures for pets? Mayor Caniff, is that a friendly amendment?
I would see it, I don't see an issue with it, assuming it's not a large size, but yes, that accommodates an animal, yes.
Small structures for animals. Councillor Crew, is that also friendly?
Okay.
All right, so we will add that in. Councillor Finn, do you have any other comments or amendments?
No, that's it for now.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, and through you. And I don't know if this would just be a friendly to number 1 or it would be number 11, but one of the deputations spoke about the encampments be 25 meters away from construction sites, which makes sense just for everybody's safety, and then 10 meters away from walkways like paths. So I would see if that could be a friendly amendment. I don't know if that would be again an extension of number 1 or if that would be a number 11.
I know that we weren't supposed to ask any questions of administration, but I don't know what the limitation of putting doing those two things. I can imagine construction's probably not a limitation, but putting to a path, I don't know whether that would further limit us or not. I saw if, Madam Chair, if I could defer to someone to answer that question before I accept it.
Absolutely, CAO.
Sure, Madam Chair. I mean, if it's a path for recreational purposes, that would be fine. I am, and I know we're done with sort of comments from staff, but I do know that emergency services are concerned about the one site in terms of being able to get staff into that site. So there may be a path actually, at some point, may come back and say to council, we may actually need a path to be able to get vehicles in and out of there to be able to provide services. So as long as that it's clear that a path, there's a difference between a recreational path and a path for purposes like that, I would suspect it's okay. I don't know if Chief Case wants to comment. Or?
Just to confirm, I did mean a path and a recreational
Sure.
use, yeah.
If that's the case, I'm comfortable putting in the 25 meters from, or sorry, 10 meters from recreational and 25 from a construction site.
Councillor Crew, friendly?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We will add that. Councillor Doyle, do you have any other amendments you'd like to propose?
Nope, that's everything. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Story?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment to item 1 as well as an additional item. The first being that in order to ensure an informed and transparent decision process, defer back to administration the encampment distance protocols to the September meeting, as Councillor Crew mentioned, where administration can report back with locations that would fit within the 25, 50, and 100 meter setback radius, permitting the public to provide feedback and deputations on the implications of the setback distances in the bylaw, if it ends up being a bylaw.
So Councillor Story, I think what I hear, rather than an amendment, that's a motion to refer item number 1 back to staff to provide a report at a future, or at the September council meeting.
Thank you for clarifying.
Is
Yes.
that, yes?
Yep,
Is there a seconder for Councillor Story's motion to refer the details of item 1 back to staff to receive a staff report? Councillor Allen, I can see that second. Okay. So now we will move into just having.
Point of order, sorry, I had one more, sorry.
Oh, is it an amendment or is it part of a referring back to staff?
It's an amendment, sorry. To this.
But not an amendment to number 1?
No.
Okay, so we'll deal with the referral first, and then we can, Councillor Story, I'll return to you for an additional amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have right now a motion to just refer the details of number 1 back to staff for a report. I will take now questions or comments about only that subject matter, so just the referring back. Councillor Bondi. Oh, sorry, actually first, does Councillor Story get to speak to the referral? Yes, Councillor Allen was the seconder. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Story. Floor is yours. Sorry, but Councillor Bondi, you're up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My reason for asking for this is just to make sure that we don't repeat what just happened. Essentially to just have some communication and some clarity from administration about what those sites might look like. I do have some concern, it has been mentioned multiple times tonight by administration, that the 100 meter distance might be problematic. So I would just like to, and maybe that's what we have to end up going with, but I do feel like if we have more information as a council to review that with more detail from administration at that September meeting, we will make a clear and transparent decision for the public as well as within council. So that is my intent. It's not an intent to delay anything unnecessarily, but I do think we need clarity on what sites would be available to us on that front. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Story. Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with this referral back, that would take, so if we vote in favor of the motion, that will take number 1 out until, and sorry if I can kind of ask my neighbor, why September, not the August meeting? Just time?
Yeah, I felt since there's going to be more information coming in the September meeting, and that it's being summer and that's 2 weeks away, I just felt like that would,
Okay.
just a timing thing to give staff enough time and the public enough time to get the improper information. Thank you.
So I just want to continue, it's more maybe a comment than a question, but if we vote in favor of this, because that's kind of the teeth of this motion, right? I would think, in my opinion anyway. So nothing really is going to change with this location until that information comes back, and then we would vote on still number 1, or would it be an amended number 1? Because that changes everything, doesn't it? Right, in my
Councillor
opinion.
Bondi, is that a question to the clerk around the process on the refer back?
Well, whoever wants to answer, sure.
To the CAO or the clerk?
Sure, I can, so I think if the question is, will it change anything with respect to the current encampment? Well, obviously, if we don't deal with the 150 meters, 100 meters today, then the distance from the residential won't change in the policy, because that's not, you're not making a decision on that because you're referring it back. If the other elements of this motion, and I realize there may be some other amendments, but if the other elements of this motion do get passed, then the only impact, as I see it, the only impact on the current encampment is some of these other rules, such as the single tent, such as the pet, the bicycle, stuff like that. And I'm not saying the other things aren't important, but at least in terms of for the residents and what they're going to see on that site, no, we wouldn't be making any changes to the existing site if you put off dealing with, I'm not saying whether you should or shouldn't, I'm just saying you won't see any existing changes to the site in terms of distances if you put that off until September. Mr. Taylor, would you agree with my interpretation?
Yes.
Right, well, and through you, Madam Chair, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to be clear because I think it's pretty important, because that's kind of the reason I think that we're here, is to discuss the location, and this will delay any location relocation or elimination until at least September, and then we get into processing the whole thing. So just so that we're all clear that if we kick this down the road to September, not much is going to change except for 1 tent, 1 person, the other things that are important, but I don't think equally as important. I think that's number 1 is kind of the.
You are correct. And,
okay,
and
all right, that's great.
And I should point out too that just in case that's where we end up, I don't want the public to think that that means tomorrow we will be enforcing some of those things in the protocol. We still have to come back, create the bylaw, get you to pass that. While I'm confident we can do some of the enforcement with the help of the police, it's not going to change anything overnight either in terms of some of those rules. So either way, tomorrow is going to look very similar than today. But certainly if you were to agree to the proposal, that would mean the distance wouldn't change at least until September or sometime thereafter.
Yeah, maybe much further than September, right? By the time that would all have to be created and processed. And
that would
so we're almost into the winter time, right?
That would require, well, I don't know about that, but that would require.
Well, hopefully not.
Yeah,
I'm not predicting an early winter, but,
okay,
you know what I'm saying.
But that would require a bylaw change as well if you change it in September. So even then, it wouldn't happen necessarily on the date of that council meeting.
Right.
Because unfortunately, there's a process we have to go through at least to get up and running.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. I just want to be clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bondi. Councillor C. McGregor.
Thank you. My questions were just answered. Thank you.
Are there any other, okay, I see Mayor Kenneth, then Councillor Sakachi, then Councillor Anderson speaking to
Sure.
the referral.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment. I think it's very important that if we're going to move it, wherever it's being moved to is dealt with. But I think waiting till September and allowing another 6 weeks or 7 weeks to establish there, I think if we are going to move it, it would be better to move it quickly and not get the established as much as. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. Councillor Sakachi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my I'm kind of torn on this one because I definitely agree with Mayor Caniff is stating, but a lot of the conversations that we've received was about the communication and lack of transparency. And to be frank to everybody here, we never received no letter about the potential locations of the shelter. I had no idea what the potential locations were or where residents were going. So my concern now is if we make a decision tonight, we are literally telling the people in the Thames Valley Conservation Area, we're telling the people in the Pax and Bush area, we are making a decision tonight without consulting anybody, and this is something that we actually are doing. We actually are making that decision that's not non-transparent. So just to Mr. Dubin quickly, because I think that, you know, I don't want to take too much floor time, but if this passes tonight with the setbacks, how long is that going to take you to implement anyways and to enforce? This isn't something, I understand that, because does the bylaw not have to come back to be approved anyways? And what do those steps look like? And what kind of time are we looking at, regardless if this is deferred or not? Because what I don't want to do is tell everybody in those communities that their opinions don't matter either.
The bylaw, thank you for your question. The bylaw will take at least one meeting to prepare, so I think you'd be looking at the August meeting. Bylaws are not terribly, I know I don't do it, so I apologize to those that do it, but it's not terribly difficult to prepare. We have most of the language of the protocol already, so it's just taking the language, whatever change comes out today, and then preparing the document and bringing it forward for passage by council at the next council meeting. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So just one last comment to maybe to the original mover and the person that deferred. Is there a potential that we could meet somewhat in the middle in regards to the meeting time frame to try to at least provide some consultation? It doesn't have to necessarily be friendly. My concern is that this, at least this allows us some time frames to notify the people that are in those areas, as well as to Mayor Caniff's stated about the kind of the establishment of the actual challenges that we will be facing.
Councillor Sakachi, are you asking for a formal friendly amendment to turn this to process at the August meeting?
If that's possible with the clerk, I guess that's my formal inquiry, if we can do that.
Councillor Story and Councillor Allen, is that friendly?
I think as long as staff feel comfortable with that time frame, then I have no problem with that time frame. And I'm not trying to delay anything. I just feel like we have gotten to this situation because we didn't have that consultation. It is not an attempt to delay. It is genuinely an attempt to avoid what just happened. And I know that being there another 7 weeks is no one's preference, but it really does. And if it's going to take that same length of time, as Councillor Sakachi just said, but if we can get that information by August 11th, absolutely. I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Totally agree.
And to our CAO, is that feasible to have the information back by August?
I'm going to ask staff if they think it's feasible. I mean, obviously, Mr. McAllister has done some work in terms of identifying, distances and properties we own. We probably should refine that somewhat. I don't think there are any other major suggested changes in the protocol which would increase our work. So, Jody and Bruce, can I ask you to respond to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start here. Are we just talking about the community of Chatham here in terms of this immediate motion, or all communities in Chatham-Kent? That's extra work is why I'm asking if we're going to go down that road. And I would suggest we can't get that by August 11th. If we're just looking initially here of dealing with Chatham, I think we could get that information for Jody's team to have.
So I'll return to our original mover, Mayor Caniff, to confirm that the bylaw that you were speaking about, and specifically some of these setbacks, are you okay to have it restricted to the community of Chatham initially?
In order to simplify things, yes, but I think that we need to explore further. But based on Mr. McAllister's statement that he doesn't believe there's probably anywhere in any of the other communities that it would be applicable to. But if there is, we'd like to know it, or like to know it.
Absolutely. No vacations for you guys in the next few weeks, so I'm kidding. Okay, thank you. So that is a friendly amendment to move that to the August meeting. Councillor Sakachi, do you have any other comments?
Just Jody was putting her hand up to speak.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Madam Chair. I am a little bit concerned about getting to the August 11th meeting. I certainly understand and appreciate the urgency in getting something before Council and understand the need for input. And I think it's a matter of getting it done well and getting it done fast. And I'm worried that we're not going to be able to get it done in the way that we need to get it done before August 11th. If it's the will of council to bring it back on August the 11th, we will do everything that we can to get it here, and we'll do our best to make that happen. But I will just leave that with you for consideration.
Thank you, Jody. Councillor Sakachi, any further comments?
I just think it's important to make an informed decision, but I recognize that 7 weeks or 2 months is far too long. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you, Councillor Scotchy. Answered my thing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question was, before the last conversation, was going to ask if we could get information about Wallaceburg. I know it was mentioned tonight. Now, I don't want to get into it, including information about all communities, but I know it was mentioned tonight that Kim talked about encampments starting to pop up in Wallaceburg. I know it's nowhere to the extent of what we're seeing in Chatham currently, but it is starting to become more visible. So I guess my question to staff is, given the, I agree with sending this back. I think we need to be transparent. We need more information. I agree with that. But I guess, is it possible to have some, at least some tentative information about Wallaceburg? Because the 100-meter setback really raised some questions for me about what that does for Wallaceburg at this time. So, you know, is it possible to get some information for Wallaceburg in the August update or report?
Yeah, through you. I don't think that needs a motion. I think what you heard from staff is that we recognize you want it for all of Chatham-Kent, but we would need more time to do all of that. So we'll deliver on the Chatham as fast as we can, according to Jody's comment. I agree with her. And then the rest of it will have to come a little bit later. I will say that I don't think we own as many properties in some of the other communities. And if we do, there are things like treatment plants, things like that. So, you know, fire stations, which tend to be, you know, very much surrounded by residential. So I do think it's going to take some time. So I would commit on behalf of staff to get that to you. If we can just focus on Chatham for now, and the reason why we're here today, we'll get that to you as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Okay.
And Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So tonight, if we vote on this, to get a bylaw drawn up, so we get the bylaw in August, we will probably still be 2 weeks or a month to get everybody moved, I would, like, have we got any idea how long it will still take to get, like, the camp moved, or?
I'll ask Jody and Kim. So assuming that we were to pass a bylaw, I'm not sure that it would be, I guess we could prepare it for the August meeting to coincide with that. We've done that before. If we know it's just, you know, the distance, then we can prepare everything but that sentence. Mr. Taylor, do you agree with me? I don't know what direction council go in, but assuming, if I'm reading a room correctly, if in fact it's just a minor change coming out of that discussion, then we probably could have a draft bylaw ready to go at the same August meeting. And then I guess the question for Jody and her team and Rock is, now I have to point this out, and just because you identify a certain site that you'd like to get individuals to go to, doesn't mean that they're going to go. So that's important, and I didn't want to get into a dialogue with Councillor Story, but I didn't know where people were going to go. There are some people who chose not to go to the PUC site, and we don't know where they are. Just recognize that that doesn't necessarily mean that that's everywhere. That's where everybody's going to go. We might be right back here at some point looking at other smaller encampments, much like Sarnia had to deal with. So maybe Jody, can you answer the question? How long practically would it take after a bylaw is passed by council, if in fact they choose one or change the protocol so that there's one or two other locations? How long would it take practically to have Rock Missions work with our homeless community?
I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to give you the best answer right now on the fly. So what I can share with you is that we provided notice and we gave individuals 10 days to vacate the premises previously. So I would expect that that would probably be part of the process. I don't know what kind of resistance we may get from individuals. There's been a lot of change, there's been a lot of transition for them, so I'm not sure what resistance we may get. We would need to work with the police to identify what opportunities exist for us to partner in different ways to enforce the bylaw. So I'm thinking at minimum a couple of weeks, potentially longer than that.
So that's the answer. And I think 10 days, given that we've used that number before, is probably the minimum in the future. So I think that's a good answer.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I don't see any other comments. Councillor Allen or Councillor Storr, do you have any final thoughts before we vote?
I think I appreciate the opportunity for the discussion, and the motion that I had, my motion to defer had actual numbers in it, like 25, 50, and 100 that were deleted. But yeah, I had the 25, 50, and 100 were right before the word setback. Just so we know what we're looking at. And I just feel, again, just to reiterate, it's not because, you know, I personally don't think there's a better location or I don't want it to move. I just want to make sure that we're making the right decision with the right steps this time, and we can have a better process. And it sounds like, based on what I have heard, that it's going to take that same amount of time for that encampment to be cleared, even if we decided tonight it was going to move. So I think that time would be well spent by staff and our community to understand that. And I apologize that that's the process that would come to pass, but I don't see any. Personally, I think this is a reasonable way to make sure that we're all included in the decisions next time. Thank you.
So maybe, Bruce, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that in order for us to do the work and identify, you know, how far properties are from businesses, which have now been identified as an amendment to the motion, and homes, we're going to look at the properties we own and we're going to see how far away they are. So in our material, we will be able to answer your question, whether it's 25, 50, or 100. Hopefully, we'll be able to say, this one's 12, this one's 73, that sort of thing. So I don't think it's needed a motion. I think once you're asking us to do more legwork in terms of the distances, by default, we'll have that information. Mr. McAllister, would you agree with me?
Thank you, Chair. I would prefer to have set distances in there, because the simplest way for us to do that is to probably do a buffer based on a distance so we can understand which properties. It's a little more, it'll show you what, okay, here's what properties could accommodate a 25-meter setback. Here's what to do at 50.
So are you prepared to do your work on 25, 50, and 100?
I was just...
So we don't need the motion?
Yeah, I was just about to jump in because we noticed it was deleted. So thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the motion to refer back is referring back all of item 1, but it seems like staff very clearly understand that a little more detail on the 25 and 50-meter setback is also being asked for. So we've got confirmation that we'll have that information. Okay, with that, we will call Councillor McGregor very quick.
Yes, very quick. Could I get an approximate time when we might get information back on other communities? Only because we are dealing with a few situations, so it's going to depend on how I vote here, on how long it might be before we hear back on other communities such as Wallaceburg. Just an approximate.
Yeah, Mr. McAllister, any idea on how long it would take to do the balance of Chatham-Kent?
Thank you. I would suggest that one could come back to the September meeting. Yeah, I need to confirm with Mr. Quinton and his staff, because I think some of this work is actually through his GIS department versus my planning department, frankly. So we'll have that discussion tomorrow. But I think that's reasonable to expect that.
For September. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that conversation. So we'll now vote on the recommendation that you see here to refer item 1 back to administration.
Just to confirm,
We'll just trade.
you'll trade
Or do we
our
got to
votes?
swap? Do we got to do a run?
Yeah, do a run.
Okay.
Councillor McGrail,
Yes.
you will have to vote on your microphone, and Mayor, you'll have to vote on yours. Unless you just want to do it verbally for me. Sorry, Councillor McGrail, your response? All votes are in. Motion passes 11-5.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Story, you noted you had a second amendment to request on the original motion, which now does not include item 1. So we'll get that edited when you bring that up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had my additional item, which I think would be either 10 or 11, based on Councillor Doyle's additional item as well. But regular neighborhood communication begins immediately with appropriate members of administration, residents, and business owners in the 325 Grand Ave East Chatham property area until further notice. Thank you.
Mayor Caniff, is that a friendly amendment with regular communication being given to local residents?
I guess certainly the concept is very much accepted. It just, I don't know the practicality. Again, I don't want to say, yeah, go ahead and do that without consulting administration on what they would do and the feasibility of it. Thank you.
So I'm hearing it as friendly?
It's
enough?
friendly, subject to administration being able to do that.
Okay, Councillor Crew?
Agree.
All right, thank you. Councillor Story, do you have other amendments to recommend?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got, it's a friendly amendment, so when you have the floor next, you could ask to break it out if you'd like to vote on it separately. I've got Councillor Sakachi next, and he's the end of my list, so if you'd like to speak, put your hand up nice and high for me. Councillor Jim.
I have.
Sorry, mine's just really simplistic.
Sorry, just our CAO has a question, I believe.
Can we just get clarification on what happened? Was Councillor Story agreeing to a suggestion that the language regarding the communication be subject to staff being able to do it, or is somebody waiting for staff to answer that question?
Sorry, I'm not sure when I was able to speak to that amendment. I'm happy to speak to it now, or I wasn't sure the process.
Okay, so yeah, I can give you the floor if you'd like to speak to it as part of your time, but I'm starting timers here, folks, so that we can keep on task.
Right, again, to just go back to the communication piece that was missed previous, I think if we could have at staff discretion, either some email, community meetings, any kind of communication that with the residents on a regular basis that happens starting tomorrow, starting immediately until we make the decisions in August and September, until further notice. And I would leave that with staff discretion on what that would look like, but I think some kind of communication would be helpful with the residents and the business owners in this area moving forward until the situation changes or the location is moved. I don't need to necessarily make that super constrictive. I think staff can figure out the best way of doing that with the residents and business owners. Thank you.
Perhaps if you don't mind, Madam Chair, just real quickly, Mr. Labadie, if you can perhaps give a thought to what you have in mind. Obviously, we've had heavy communication with communities like Wheatley, for instance, so if we can duplicate that, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Ms. Chair. Eric Labadie, Manager of Corporate Communications. I think sending emails to each individual within the surrounding neighborhoods, next to impossible because we don't have their email addresses. What I could offer is setting up a dedicated Let's Talk page where residents could visit on a periodic basis to gather information, and we could update that as new information becomes available, when it does become available. As I think it has been hinted to previously, the decision to move the encampment to the PUC property was not a staff choice or a council choice. So we didn't know where it was going to go, which didn't give us the ability to communicate that proactively, right? So with this, we kind of are going to have an idea where the encampment would go, so we can definitely use a Let's Talk page to communicate that out as the details become available.
But I think, and I appreciate that, Mr. Labadie, I think the motion is talking about the Grand Avenue community.
Yep.
Not just the new Woodland or some of those other streets that potentially are impacted. And just to be clear, may be impacted. Council hasn't made that decision yet about Woodland, but rest assured you'll get phone calls tomorrow. But I think that the question is for the grand community in the interim. They're probably going to want updates on when is this coming back to council, you know, how are we doing in terms of bylaw enforcement, if they have any concerns. So could you do a dedicated Let's Talk page for the grand community? We obviously want them to call 311. We'll have a number we do now, a place where they can call in terms of Jody's shop. But we can put together a plan. So I think to the mayor's comment, subject to staff's ability, we have the ability. We'll just need a little bit of time to develop something, but we'll definitely give the folks in that area an opportunity to provide feedback and to get updates. Okay?
Yes, I can definitely commit to the Let's Talk page, and we'll go from there.
That would be great. Thank you.
Other comments? Councillor Story, will you still have the floor?
No, thank you. That's everything.
Okay. Are we still speaking? Yep, so actually, we're now speaking on the general items.
Can I call a
2
point of
to
order?
11.
Can I call a point of
Yes.
order? I did ask for if I could have an amendment, request a friendly amendment to number 1, but then we voted on Councillor Story's before I got to mine. So now what happens?
I'll turn to the clerk to summarize the procedural bylaw when a council member motions to refer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When there is a motion to refer on the floor, we don't go to everybody else around. It just is, it's called at that time and we vote on that. You could have, I suppose, raised your hand to express what speaking to that motion, to say what your interest was in number 1 and what you proposed to do, but that is done and now we're moving on to the rest.
So I can't add it here. It really did refer to number 1, but now I can't do it.
So I believe, Councillor Jubenville, because now it's coming back to the August meeting with the report, you would be able to add motions to it at the August meeting.
Okay. I think that's very unfair because I was in queue and I was overlooked, but whatever.
Yeah. I do apologize. The motion to refer does stop the conversation and then we deal with the referral only. Councillor Sakachi, you're next on the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just actually going to present mine as a notice of motion next meeting. There's no sense convoluting this anymore, so I'm going to just defer that to the notice period. Thank you.
Councillor Jubenville.
I apologize. Can we vote on these separately?
Yep, Councillor Jubenville, I have you up next to speak. Okay. So if you,
no, I just would like to vote on them separately, and I do have a question about the one about the bylaw. Which one is this? Number 8. So we are directing staff to hire additional temporary bylaw officer. Instead of directing, can we get a report? Would that be considered a friendly amendment to ask for a report instead of directing right now at this moment?
It would be a friendly amendment if we could get it by the August 11th. That would, but I don't know in that case, because I know in coming up with this, I did consult with administration and say that they looked at the best practices would be somebody dedicated to doing this to ensure that it happens.
Okay, I understand that. I appreciate that. I guess okay, so it's going to include how much it's going to cost and how many we will need.
So as the motion is written, administration, we are directing them to hire the bylaw enforcement officers to enforce these amendments, which I think is currently protocols because we don't have a bylaw yet. And then in the report back that will come to us, we will get more detail on the cost. But depending on how administration chooses to enforce the protocol, it could come with added costs that we as council don't know. You're correct, Councillor Jubenville.
Okay, that's fine. Just leave it as it is. Thank you.
Okay, and just clarifying, Councillor Jubenville has asked 2 through 11 to be voted on separately. Councillor Jubenville, do you have any other questions or comments?
No, that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do any other members of council have questions or comments before I go to second round? Just give me 1 second, Councillor Doyle. I want to give people first chance. All right, Councillor Doyle.
Sorry, thank you. Through you, just to clarify, it says bylaw officer, so we're just talking about one officer, right? Not officers.
confirming with the mayor that you would or would not like to pluralize officer?
I put officer and, well, I changed to officer and then in brackets with an S, with the hope that we could do it with one, but I didn't want to limit it through that to say if you needed 2 part-time, so I leave it to administration to determine that.
Okay, so as long as that's coming back, then the report, that's fine. Thanks.
Correct, but to be clear, the first part of number 8 is not coming back to a report, it's direct to action, and then the second part will be a report about the total costs.
Okay.
All right, are there any other questions or comments about the motion that we have in front of us? All right, thank you. It's time to, oh, yep.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just want to make sure we consider a procedural matter.
Judy and Dave, are you comfortable with the seconder and the mover speaking to it generally, or would you like us to pause? Okay, so I'll just return back to the seconder and the mover. Councillor Crew, do you have any final comments on the motion before it's voted on and we hear back from staff?
Yeah, I do have a couple comments. I was going to speak to my amendment, but I think it speaks for itself. But I think, I think we forget that at the heart of all this are people. The people living in the encampments, the people living in the neighborhoods who woke up one day and there's an encampment in your backyard, the people who work really hard, who have nice homes, and you wake up to that reality of what we're facing in our community. The people who do the work here that work hard to find solutions and make decisions. And at the end of the day, we're not going to make everyone happy. We'll be lucky to make anyone happy. And then there's the people that are doing the frontline work that are often not treated kindly or with respect. And I just want us all to remember we're people at the heart of all of this. All of us working towards a solution. And if we just show some kindness to everyone, we'll get through this a little bit easier, and all of us will get through this. That's all I have to say. I just really wish we had a solution. I wish we didn't have homeless people in our community, but here we are, and eventually the hard work that our community does and the people that do the work will get this done. And just be kind to everyone that's involved with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crew. Actually, Mayor Caniff, prior to giving you last word, I would just, following some guidance from the clerk, would like to ask Councillor Bondi. Councillor Bondi, do you have any additional amendments or additions to the protocol that's in front of us that you would like to add?
No, thanks.
Okay. Mayor Caniff?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just ultimately, as we go through this, we say there's no solution, there is a solution, and it's providing affordable housing, it's providing supportive housing, it's providing services for addictions and services for mental health. We've talked about this, and so many people that gave deputations talked about that. And ultimately, that's much of the motion is focused on that, to say let's move it. We are moving ahead towards all of those, but it was to reemphasize that and saying, listen, if we want to end encampments, then we need to deal with this and get housing built. So that's really what it focuses around here. And in the shorter term, yes, we're dealing with all these things of where people are going to go. And the last thing I want to do is a heartfelt thank you to Rock Missions. They do so much for our community. They've worked with all this, and they put up a lot of negativity, and I appreciate everything they do. I can't imagine our community, what we'd be doing right now if it wasn't for them. So I want to thank them, but it's not just them. It's municipal staff, it's fire, it's police, it's all the other advocates for homeless. We get Hope Haven, NeighborLink, all those organizations come together because this is a community problem. It's not just a municipal problem. It's not just a problem for Rock Missions. It's our problem. And that's why we're here tonight, to talk about it, try and come up with solutions. And as I mentioned earlier tonight, we're just moving down the continuum. We're not going to come up with all the solutions tonight, but the idea is when we finish this, it's going to be a little better. But we're going to start working towards that end solution. So I thank everyone who came with the deputations. I thank the community for coming together to talk about this. And I think all of these personally speak to, are pretty straightforward, but I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. So with that, I'll stop.
Thank you, Mayor Kenneth. We are now going to move to call the question. We're going to vote out items 2 through 11 separately. Council, I will remind you that it is currently 9:50 and we are working to a 10 o'clock close. So the clerk has said she thinks we might be able to do it if we're decisive. So we'll bring that up. Mayor Kenneth and I will change places. So we'll begin by calling item 2.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Now item 3. We'll just wait for it to come up on the screen.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Thank you. We will now call question 4, or on item 4.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will now call question on item 5.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-1.
And we'll now call the question on item 6.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 16-1.
Now we'll call question on item 7.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
And we will now call the question on item 8.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 13-4.
And we will now call on question, or the question on item 9.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
Still waiting for Councillor Crew. Okay, thank you. All votes are in. Motion passes 9-8.
Thank you. We will now call the question on item 10.
Councillor McGrail?
Yes.
All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
And lastly, we will call the question on item 11.
Councillor McGrail? Councillor Bondi, just waiting for yours. All votes are in. Motion passes 17-0.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and I will now hand the chair back off to Mayor Kenneth.
Thank you so much, Councillor Harrigan, for taking over. We have any notices of motion? Seeing none, non-agenda business. Keep in mind we have 5 minutes. So if there's anything, Councillor Anderson.
I'm just going to go super quickly. I wanted to take a moment to thank Chief Early and then also the police officer that I was assigned to go on a ride along with a few months back. I got to personally see firsthand what our police officers are doing within the encampments and within the neighboring people that live around them. So I know they are there every day. They definitely recognize the people that are there and have a rapport with them and the neighbors. And they certainly would recognize any newcomers that were to come in there, because we did have one that Officer Whedon did not recognize and said, "Hey, where did you come from?" So I want to appreciate all the work that our frontline workers are doing, and it's definitely appreciated how you continue to keep our communities as safe as possible. Thank you.
Councillor Bondi?
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I was just going to remind you guys that I did have a motion, right? But clearly we're not going to get to it tonight. So, because I did send it in, just want to acknowledge it because some people were looking forward to it coming up. But I get it, it's 10 o'clock and we're not going to vote to stay. But just to acknowledge that I did submit it because I just want it for the record. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to, and any others? We'll go to first and second reading. Councillor Finn and Thompson.
So moved.
Seconded.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Third and final reading. Councillor Anderson and Councillor Scotchy.
I so move.
Oh, Councillor Harrigan.
I will second.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Councillor Hall, can you resolve council? And Councillor Wright, if you can.
Certainly. I move that Chatham-Kent Council adjourn to its next meeting to be held on Monday, August 11th, 2025, and that Chatham-Kent Council authorize itself to meet in closed session on that day to discuss any matters permitted by the Municipal Act.
I'll second that. Thank you.
Anyone opposed at 9:57? Hearing none, thank you.